Chapter 121, Mira Urza, the most anticipated fusion. When Chess and Nagrez sheathed their magic, Urza finally let out a long, relieved breath. Thankfully, the equipment repair shop was in the next town. If she'd come back any later, she didn't want to think what might have happened. "Oh, Fairy Queen, I didn't expect you back so soon." Nagrez folded his arms and strolled toward Urza with his chin tipped down, an arrogant smirk on his face. A strand of black hair swayed across his forehead in the breeze. After the heady power of that fusion, he felt far too confident. He no longer regarded Urza, the woman who usually intimidated him, with the same dread. He wanted to take advantage of the moment and regain what he'd lost before, by fighting. But before he could challenge her, Urza's hand snapped up and a resounding slap landed across his face. "What did you call me?" Her eyes were ice cold, the glare of something that had crawled out of the depths of purgatory. The arrogant pose drained out of Nagrez instantly. He shrank back and stammered, Urza." That sharp slap had awakened a deep, instinctive fear, the sort that a lowly creature would feel standing before a top predator. Even if Nagrez had bested Chess in their duel, it didn't change who'd fused to make him. Natsu and Gray? Who were they most afraid of? The answer needed no thought. Urza. The slap struck again, this time on the other side of his face, leaving him dazed. Under Urza's cold stare, the guild's strongest magician became brittle and apologetic. "I'm sorry, Urza, my lady." Nagrez's eyes went wide and glassy like a startled boy. Urza relaxed a fraction. "That's better. I don't care if you're Natsu or Gray, messing with Chess and the others is unacceptable." She grabbed the dragon scale scarf at Nagrez's throat, yanked him close, and warned, "Try acting tough in front of me, and I'll kill you." Nagrez couldn't summon a single rebuttal. He nodded like a lamb. The truth is..." Happy flew down and landed lightly on the shattered ground, looking scandalized. "It's very rude to interrupt a duel between men, Urza." Urza let go of Nagrez and walked over with a sour look. Nagrez, relieved to have escaped further punishment, watched with a smirk, thinking, "Don't make me the only one getting slapped. Do it to Chess, too." He hoped Urza would oblige. Urza stopped in front of Chess and, without a word, wrapped her arms around him in a crushing embrace. A dull metallic thud sounded as Chess's helmet met Urza's chest plate. "You were going to let Chess off easy? Where are the slaps?" Nagrez complained. Urza shot him a single look, and his complaint evaporated. "Chess is very strong. Conventional suppression won't work. Sometimes all I can use is love." Chess, trapped against the cold armor and unable to move, sighed. "Your love is really hard." He could have dodged her easily. He'd used plenty of energy in the fight, but the data they'd gathered about fusion and Godslayer magic was more important than finishing with a massive area blast. Besides, flattening the whole mountain range would bring an awkward compensation conversation, even if Chess could afford it. So he gave Urza a little face and stopped. He snapped his fingers, a magic circle flared and magic rippled outward. Nagrez glowed with a blinding white light, then slowly split apart. "Ugh, gross," both Natsu and Gray said in unison. Back in their own bodies, Natsu and Gray exchanged a look and instinctively put some distance between them. The memory of being fused made them both dry heave. Nagrez's scarf and shorts were on Natsu. Gray, predictably, was back to his natural state of nakedness. Urza released Chess and stood thinking for a moment, watching the two be awkwardly themselves again. She'd had a rough idea of Chess's card fusion magic from Happy on the way back, but seeing Natsu and Gray separate in person still impressed her. It was far more powerful than a simple unison raid. The battle between the Sky Dragon and the Ice Flame Dragon was over. Everyone returned to the new guild construction site across the lake. A chorus of disgruntled voices greeted them. "Urza, how could you stop them like that? They didn't finish. How are we supposed to settle our bets?" "We were about to make a fortune and buy so much fish. At least let them finish the last move. Chess can afford to compensate." The members who'd bet on the fight mobbed Urza with complaints. She arched one eyebrow, and the crowd quieted instantly. "What, Macau? You seem pretty worked up." Macau, shoved back behind other guild members, was sweating. No, nothing like that." Mira swept in gracefully from the side. "Urza, you came back just in time. If that had continued, they'd have scared all the fish in the lake and the small animals in the mountains," she said with a gentle smile. Lucy peered at the ruined lakeshore and muttered, they'd probably still be sleeping very peacefully now. Meaning, the animals wouldn't be waking up. Lucy, why didn't you stop Chess sooner? Urza snapped suddenly. Lucy flinched, furrowing her brow in surprise. Me? Stop those two. Well, 3 monsters? She protested. Urza sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Honestly, I'm pretty much done with you, she said with exasperation. Happy floated over to cheer Lucy up. It's okay, Lucy. You're terrible, but not cowardly. Lucy groaned. Thanks, I'd prefer you'd just be quiet. Urza turned her attention to Chess. By the way, Chess, what exactly is your new card fusion magic? And the power you used earlier, it felt like Dragon Slayer magic. How does that work? Everyone else leaned in. After seeing Nagrez's power, they were curious too. Black Magician Girl stepped forward, all charm, and volunteered to explain. After she detailed the mechanisms of fusion and the newly revealed God Slayer magic, the crowd murmured in awe. Fusion's potency was obvious from Nagrez's S-class level performance. God Slayer magic, a lost art said to slay gods, was a revelation to most of them. Gray, now modestly wrapped in something, muttered, I really don't get along with that fire idiot. Hey, Loki, if we fused, we'd make a powerful team. He found Loki in the crowd. Loki adjusted his glasses and sounded weak. Sorry, Gray, I don't feel like moving much right now. Gray frowned. You okay? Yeah, just tired. I'm heading back. Loki slipped away with his hands in his pockets, not wanting to reveal whatever was bothering him. Gray watched him go and muttered, Is he heartbroken? Natsu sought out Elfman. Man, I'm fired up. The 2 high-energy types hit it off immediately, which made Lucy sweat bullets. The idea of 2 overly muscular types fusing was enough to make her back away several paces. Chess's fusion can make 1 + 1 greater than 2, Jet and Troy crowed. If we fused, we could protect Levi-chan even better. Levi took Lucy's hand and grinned. I want to try fusing with you too. Why not 2 girls? Lucy squeaked, cheeks burning. Fuse with me instead. The lecherous old-timer Macau piped in. The strongest alliance would be between the guild elders and the newcomers. Lucy backed away. Keep your abacus off me. Around them, people matched up fusion partners of their own. Kana and Loki, Warren and Nob, Lidus and Vegeta. Marcus, who used sand magic, smugly declared he'd fuse with the strongest master. The whole guild buzzed with possibilities. In a shadowed corner, Juvia bit at her sleeve, trying to choke back the urge to run over and kneel before Chess, begging for a card so she could fuse with Gray, even though at the moment she was still an enemy of Fairy Tail. Mira rested her chin on her hand and daydreamed about fusing with Urza. If we did, no one in this guild could stand against us, Urza said confidently, hand on her hip. The 2 had been rivals for years and knew how dangerous each other could be. Lucy and Levi joined them. I'd love to try it too, but I don't think it's possible yet, Chess said, holding up his hands. The conditions for activating fusion depended heavily on the strength of the participants. With his current power, even with card buffs, he couldn't make Urza and Mira fuse successfully. That combination, Requip and Take Over in one, was the most sought-after pairing in the whole guild. For the rest, Chess was only mildly interested, though he might tease them sometimes and keep testing the fusion cards. Urza glanced toward a secluded pile of construction materials. Hey, isn't that one of the 4 elements from Phantom Lord? She said, her voice a little more serious. That's right. I think her name is Juvia, Mira said as Juvia vanished behind a stack of boards. She's been hanging around here since we started building the new guild hall, guarding the entrance before dawn. The Phantom Lord incident had just passed. Juvia's attempts at hiding weren't the best, so it was no surprise she'd been noticed. Phantom Lord? One of the 4 elements? An enemy? Lucy's novice naivete made her jumpy. Don't worry, she doesn't seem hostile, Mira said calmly. Chess added with a smile. Actually, she seems to have a crush on someone in our guild. Oh? Who? Lucy and Livy leaned in, suddenly all ears. Mira lifted the hem of her burgundy dress, stepped closer, and whispered the name into their ears. Both Lucy and Livy gasped. It wasn't just surprise, it was the absurdity of the idea. Gray, the man who habitually strips and was currently lounging naked nearby, chatting with Kana. Sensing their stares, Gray looked up, puzzled. Lucy and Levi scurried behind Mira and Urza, mortified. Gray scratched his head. What's with these people? Why are they being so secretive? Chapter 122, The The Saint 10 test? Makarov's sinister intentions. In the council branch, in the corridor outside the courtroom, Makarov sat on a low wall clad in a Saint 10 cloak, a small old man beside him. The man wore a tricorn hat, had thick gray eyebrows, narrow eyes, and limbs so thin a gust of wind seemed like it might blow him away. His name was Yajima, one of the 9 council members. In his youth, he'd been close with Makarov, Porliusica, and the others, often defending Fairy Tail against the trouble they caused. Stripping Gozé of his 10 Wizard Saints title, disbanding Phantom Lord, imprisoning G-Man, and declaring Fairy Tail innocent, that was the inevitable verdict, Makarov said first, in a low voice. Since this guild war had been entirely instigated by Phantom Lord and Sabretooth, and unlike the fierce controversy of the original events, the council hadn't singled out Fairy Tail this time. Even Org and Michello, who usually complained about Fairy Tail's methods, were quieter than usual and could only pick at irrelevant details. Although the evidence was conclusive, little Makarov, I did my best to counter the objections others raised, Yajima said, waggling a finger, especially about the compensation for your losses. Thanks, little Yajima. When the new guild hall's built, I'll treat you to ramen, Makarov said gratefully. If it's Fairy Tail ramen, I want 12 slices of char siu, Yajima answered without ceremony. 12 slices? That's excessive. According to Article 26 of the Guild Management Regulations. No problem, no problem. 12, 20, whatever you want. I only want 12. They shared a short, light-hearted moment before falling silent again. Yajima lowered his head, remembering someone who had behaved very strangely in the courtroom. But Ultir, she's always been neutral and quiet. For her to stand so resolutely with Fairy Tail and even argue with Michello, that surprised me. Makarov rubbed his nose, a pleased smile tugging at his face. All thanks to the children in my guild, the ones who caused the most trouble, no less. After the Phantom Lord incident, Makarov had learned the whole story of Karuna Island from Chess, Deliora, Ultir and her daughter, and the master-disciple histories of Grey and Lion. He'd been struck by the coincidences. He remembered how, the first time Grey came to the guild, Grey wanted to know how to undo Absolute Zero. You mean that brat Chess? Yajima glared. In less than a month back in Fiore, this previously notorious kid had stirred up a lot of commotion. Though still reckless in familiar ways, Chess had quietly shifted many neutral council members' opinions toward Fairy Tail, gaining more voices of support. Exactly. Since José's been expelled, I'm thinking of entering him in this year's Saint 10 assessment. Makarov chuckled as he revealed his plan. You must be kidding, Yajima said with a shake of his head. It wasn't that he didn't acknowledge Chess's strength. After all, he'd stood up to José. He doubted Chess's character. Letting such a rule-breaking youth become a Saint 10 would not be good for Fairy Tail. And Makarov himself was a 10 Wizard Saints. Adding one more would surely stir dissent within the council. Precisely because of that, he needs to join, Makarov said with an ill-natured chuckle. Those few at the top of the Saint 10 can keep that brat's arrogance in check. I see. Use outside pressure to help him mature, Yajima mused, then fell quiet for a moment before agreeing. The strength of those few, it's unfathomable. They've long since surpassed normal humans. There were even rumors of talk about an Ishgar Heavenly King, though nothing official had been raised yet. Makarov's tone grew suddenly wistful. After all, I've reached the age where I should be thinking about retiring. That's good you realize that, little Makarov, Yajima said with relief. He'd been thinking of persuading Makarov to step back from dangerous affairs after the tragedy of his old friend Rob, who had sacrificed himself to save Urza at the Tower of Paradise. And little Makarov, I have some good news, Yajima added. What good news? Someone anonymously donated 1 billion J to Fairy Tail. 1 billion? Makarov stared, his mouth twisting into a smile. 1 billion? Meanwhile, in a spacious office at the council, Ultir watched Zikrain with pained eyes. Dressed in form-fitting casual clothes, she sat across from him as he looked frantic and distorted. After returning from Karuna Island, Ultir had confessed everything to Zikrain, who was actually Jalal, to atone for her past sins. But Jalal, who'd been consumed by darkness for years, had long since lost the man he once was. He clung to the identity of being chosen by the Black Mage. His obsession with finishing the Tower of Paradise, offering sacrifices to revive Zareth, and creating a new great magic world had rooted itself so deeply he'd lost all rationality. So you were behind it all? What a joke, Zikrain sneered, eyes burning with homicidal light as he glared at Altair. Wake up, Altair. You're the one who's been brainwashed and led astray by that damn chess. A staunch supporter of his paradise plan, Zikrain blamed chess for Altair's change. Combining Altair's statements and experiences, he pointed all the blame at chess. He didn't know what magic could have brainwashed Altair, but among those involved, only chess had the power to do such a thing in his mind. Watching Zikrain's twisted expression, Altair's heart ached. She clenched her hands so tight her nails tore her skin, blood welled and stained the white cuff of her sleeve. Zikrain, everything I'm saying is true. When you were captured by the Black Mage cult, I used... Enough, Altair. Zikrain slammed his hand on the table and rose. This is your last warning. If you speak such boring, childish nonsense again, I will erase you without hesitation. And don't even think about running to those old geezers in the council. If the Tower of Paradise plan leaks, everyone in the tower will go down with it. Zikrain. Altair's pain deepened and the light went out of her tear-filled eyes. She was desperate, unsure what she could do to save the man she once loved. Perhaps this was retribution, punishment for the sins she'd committed. Seeing her so broken, Zikrain's agitation slowly eased. His eyes flickered with a new calculation, as if he were weaving a new scheme. Don't worry, Altair. Soon you will return to normal. Chapter 13, News from Ulu Northern Continent, a small town wrapped in ice and snow year-round. Ulu sat in front of a fruit stand in the central square, an apple in hand. When I first arrived here, it startled me, she said, taking a bite. I never expected it to become so prosperous. She glanced at the dense cluster of buildings and the steady stream of people going about their business. 2 years ago, they built a railway through town. Transportation's easier now, so naturally more travelers and adventurers come through. The fruit seller, a freckled woman and an old friend, smiled bright as she watched Ulu. More important than that is that you've come back from the frozen state, she said, wiping away tears of joy. Ulu knew how dangerous and controversial the whole business of resurrection could be and how much trouble, even risk to others' lives, it had caused chess. So publicly she explained it away. She'd spent 10 years undoing the side effects of Absolute Zero and reclaiming her body. As a master of ice make magic, that sounded believable enough, and the 10-year timeline also discouraged anyone from trying Absolute Zero. Haha, I guess I was just incredibly lucky. My life wasn't meant to end, Ulu said, smiling and rubbing the back of her head. She felt gratitude in her eyes. She had indeed been lucky to meet Chess. Otherwise, she wouldn't have watched Gray and Lion grow up, much less been reunited with her daughter, who had died and been resurrected. It still stung that she couldn't get revenge on Brain, the one who had tricked her and experimented on Altair. The old Magic Development Research Institute was long since a ruin. Oh, right, you said you'd seen those 2 kids, Gray and Lion. How are they? The fruit seller asked, curious. With the new transport links, news from the northern continent reached even remote places, and she'd heard of Fairy Tale. She just wasn't sure if the troublemaker Gray was the same boy she remembered. Lion, she'd heard nothing about. Gray's with Fairy Tale now. Lion, looks like he's thinking of joining the Lamia Scale Guild, Ulu answered, leaning her elbow on the counter and propping half her face in her palm. Gray's fine, but that Lion has completely forgotten everything I taught him. You taught him? The woman echoed. Yeah, how to take off his clothes to better sense the natural environment and the magical currents in the air. The fruit seller flushed, embarrassed. That did not sound like a proper habit at all. Not knowing much about the world of mages, she laughed awkwardly and steered the conversation. Those are both famous guilds. What about you, Ulu? What are your plans? If nothing unexpected comes up, I'll head back to Ishal in a few days. The kids are all there. Ulu looked down at the half-eaten apple, her gaze distant. Besides, the level of magic there is much stronger than it is here in Isfahan. She had always been obsessive about magic research, someone who could forget to eat and sleep. Now, after a 10-year blank, a richer magical system and new knowledge would have developed. She needed time to study and explore it all. Beyond personal interest, she had to keep up with the times if she wanted to protect Gray, Lion, and Ultier. The thought kept her awake at night. The fruit seller sighed but smiled. I understand. If that's what you've decided, you have my full support. Keep in touch, all right? Of course. And if I have time, I'd like to bring those two brats back here for some training. Really? Then make sure they stop by for a fruit meal. No problem. Magnolia. Gentle morning sunlight filtered through thin clouds onto Fairy Tale's construction site. Inside a fenced-off section, a temporary bar counter, an extra request board, and a neat row of tables and chairs had been set up. The guild hadn't been able to keep everyone on the construction site all day, so after a few days of adjustments, the request board reopened and members could use the temporary area as before. At the bar, Lucy and Mira were talking. Mira, do you think the guild's rebuild will be delayed because of the construction? Lucy asked, glancing over at her relaxed friends. Macau and Wakaba were leafing through glamour photos with lecherous grins. Kana was drinking and thumbing through the book of secret arts that Chess had given her. She claimed it was training. Jet and Troy were squabbling over who'd get to feed Levy the breakfast they'd brought. If you're worried, I could apply to Master to have you sent to the site to move bricks, Mira said, producing a magic communication lacrima as if to contact Makarov. Wait, Mira, I didn't mean that. Lucy blurted, panicking. She'd only been joking. If she were exiled to the construction site to lug bricks, it would be a disaster. Oh, what a shame. That job pays 10,000 J a day, Mira teased. 10,000? Since when? Lucy's eyes practically lit up. For a moment, she was genuinely tempted. That's a perk only for guild members, Mira said, resting her chin on her hand. I heard from Master that someone anonymously invested $1 billion in the guild's reconstruction. He's currently negotiating with the builders to secure the best materials and the finest workers. $1 billion! Lucy gasped, more shocked than even Makarov had been. That's unbelievable. Mira rolled her eyes playfully, then fixed Lucy with a mock serious stare. We've only been getting reports and rumors. I'm curious who could possibly afford that and be willing to donate without wanting fame or a return. There weren't many people in Fiora who could drop that kind of money and ask for nothing in return. If anyone at all could, it would be someone from the Heartfilia Consortium. Someone Lucy might know. And with what Natsu, Gray, and the others had said yesterday about Jude being so approachable, the identity of the anonymous investor seemed obvious. Lucy looked down at the bar counter and fell silent. Even Lucy, normally slow to pick up on things, couldn't miss that hint. Chapter 124. Chess, join forces with me to build the strongest guild in Ishal. Aha! There are still good people in this world. If that's the case, I'll ask the old man to build a dragon's nest. Natsu's sudden appearance cut through Lucy's tangled thoughts. Don't talk about being a legitimate wizard guild. What do you mean building something like that in town? He demanded. Lucy sighed, dismissed her wild guesses, and leapt up to shred the mental image of Natsu's hideous dragon's nest. No way, Natsu. The design of the guild was decided a long time ago. Happy, who was rarely on Natsu's side this time, shook his head with an unusually troubled expression. It was so out of character that Lucy almost praised him, until Happy continued, face serious. Since it's a new guild, we should definitely get a huge fish tank as the centerpiece. When everyone's tired from work, they can sit and watch it to relax. Lucy shot him a skeptical look. That's a nice idea, but is that really what you're thinking? Aye. Happy raised his paw enthusiastically. Aye, my foot, Lucy snapped, grabbing at the drool trickling from Happy's mouth. Before you say stuff like that, can you at least wipe your drool? Talking about relaxing. This dead cat just wanted a free buffet. I know what you're really after, Happy. You want to get rid of the competition and use the generous person's billion to buy those revealing outfits, Lucy accused. Exactly. The dragon's nest is way better, Happy retorted. Natsu stepped forward, indignant. What? Where? There aren't any revealing outfits. Lucy panicked, darted forward at lightning speed, and clapped her hand over Happy's smelly mouth. And that billion is the guild's public fund. Oh my, so that's the explosive news I overheard. Mira at the bar smiled, amused. No wonder Lucy's so popular in the guild. Lucy's face burned crimson from embarrassment. Two brainless idiots, and they still don't know who donated the money, she muttered. Gray strolled over and glared at Natsu. Pervert. Who are you calling an idiot? Whoever answers is who it is. That's you, Natsu. You've got to be kidding. Believe it or not, I'll knock you down right now. If you've got the guts, try it. I haven't gotten back at you for yesterday's fusion yet. Their foreheads bumped together like a couple of bullheaded kids. But instead of breaking into their usual fight, a barrel suddenly flew in from the side, smashing into them and sending both spinning backwards, dazed. Say that again, you bastards, a stern voice barked. Lucy and Mira sobered up at once and looked up. Urza stood there, expression dark, fists clenched as if barely holding back her wrath. Opposite her, Laxus sat with one leg over the other and a smug, irritating grin on his face. I've made it very clear, this guild doesn't need the weak, Laxus said coldly. I heard a few weaklings nearly got taken out by Phantom Lord. Who were they? Things that shame the guild aren't even worth remembering. Levy and the others named looked down, ashamed. And you, Miss Celestial Magician over there, Laxus continued. It's thanks to you that the guild was so badly damaged. Useless people are just trouble. Laxus! Mira slammed both hands on the temporary bar. This wasn't anyone's fault. You who ignored the recall notice have less right to criticize. The guildmaster told me so. If I'd been in the fight, I wouldn't have waited for Phantom Lord to show up, Laxus shot back coldly. His arrogance only grew. If I were guildmaster, I'd expel all the weak and those who resist. I'd build the strongest guild, one that wouldn't be beaten at its doorstep. A guild whose name alone makes people tremble. His words cast a pall over the room. Even those who disagreed couldn't help lowering their heads. Laxus's strength was undeniable. Urza's patience had reached its limit. Even gentle Mira had dark purple magic rippling around her as she prepared to react. Oh, I wondered why the construction site smelled so foul today. Turns out it's you shouting, Laxus, a mocking voice said from the fence entrance. Relief and curiosity swept through the room as Chess, accompanied by a black magician girl, strolled in with a smile. His presence eased the tense, oppressive mood. You sure know how to pick a time to show up, Chess. Laxus's posture stiffened, muscles tightening under his shirt. Unlike Urza or Mira, Chess might not be holding back here. He could attack at full strength. Laxus braced himself. I heard about your fight with Jose, Laxus said. You're not like those weaklings. How about it? Join me. If you come over, we can turn Fairy Tail into the strongest guild in Fiore, even in Ishal. Chess's reply was cold and concise. Are you finished? Whoosh. A flash of light and several cards materialized on Chess's fingertips. The refusal was blunt and unmistakable. You, one day I'll make you rue staying with these weak pieces of trash. Laxus spat. His momentum ebbed. He knew what punishment would come if he attacked his comrades in the guild. He could hold himself back, at least for now. He didn't want to completely burn his bridges with the old man. After leaving that harsh parting shot, Laxus turned into a streak of yellow lightning and vanished. As soon as he left, the room relaxed. What an annoying, rebellious child, Chess muttered, sheathing his cards and shaking his head. With fusion and Godslayer magic at his disposal, he was confident he could beat Laxus, but that wouldn't solve the real issue. Laxus's attitude could only be fixed when he exhausted himself emotionally, realized his own value to his comrades in battle, and came to appreciate them. That was the reasoning, though for a moment, Chess had been tempted to strike. Laxus was just too easy to want to punch. The real contest between them, in endurance and stubbornness, was already underway. It's amazing. Once that annoying fly leaves, the air gets so much fresher, he added, taking a steadying breath and putting on a relaxed smile as he walked toward the temporary bar. Before he arrived, Mira had already carried a warm breakfast over from the counter and set it down in front of him with a kind smile. Chapter 125, Live-in Sons-in-Law? The Strongest Team. Speaking of which, Mira, you really take such good care of Chess. You leave him breakfast every day. Watching Chess shovel food down his throat, Lucy leaned toward Mira and purred the sort of gossip that was all teeth. Happy's earlier comment about her revealing clothes had given her one embarrassed moment too many, so she wanted to see Mira blush in return. Hey, that'd be priceless. Chess helped me a lot when we were on Ermo Relic Island, Mira said with a calm tilt of her head, looking at Ches as if she'd already read Lucy's mischief. She saw straight through it. Ah, so that's how it is. Lucy's prepared teasing lines died on the spot. She flopped against the counter, defeated, but Mira's counterattack came just as quickly. "It was you, Lucy," Mira said, "who brought Natsu and Gray to meet your parents so quickly. How did it go? Did Jude say which one he preferred?" Mira's smile was gentle, but her words had the sting of a lance. Lucy tensed and glanced around wildly. When she saw her guildmates were still arguing about Laxus and hadn't noticed, she stammered out, "Preferred who? There's no such thing. Natsu and Gray, they went on their own." "Oh, so it's a live-in son-in-law kind of arrangement then." Mira tapped a delicate finger to her cheek, pretending to think it over seriously. "If he didn't explicitly prefer one, it must be Jude wanting you to choose. But I think Natsu should." "Sorry. My bad, Mira." Lucy burst, face flaming. She lunged forward and clung to Mira's waist, practically begging her to stop. She knew exactly how fast rumors ran through Fairy Tale. Just those 4 words, live-in son-in-law, and the busybodies would have reinvented the whole story by morning. Her little theatrics earned a shake of the head from Chess, who had finished his breakfast. He smiled to himself. Rookie instinct. Why pick a fight with someone like Mira? It was bound to end badly. The scrape of armor announced Urza's arrival at the makeshift bar counter, just in time to rescue Lucy from her own scandal. "You know," Urza said, stopping to look over at Natsu and Gray with a smile, "we've been together a lot lately." "Natsu, Gray, Happy, and Lucy, let's make a proper team," she declared. Natsu and Gray blinked. Lucy, even more surprised. "Huh? Me?" The guild erupted in joyful noise. "What, you hadn't noticed? I thought you were already a team." "Urza, Natsu, and Gray, this could be Fairy Tale's strongest team for sure. Drop the could be, and don't forget Lucy, the world's greatest complainer." "Aha, true." Lucy clapped a hand over her face, wriggling between pride and embarrassment. "Teaming with you, Urza, are you sure that's okay? I'm still a newbie, not very strong." "It's not a question of okay," Natsu said, grinning wide. "The team isn't complete without Lucy." "Aye," Happy chimed in with firm agreement. Lucy's pupils shrank a little as her cheeks warmed. Chess watched the scene and shook his head with an amused smile. As expected of a high EQ, hot-blooded male lead and a ditzy female lead. Across the counter, Black Magician Girl had Mira's arm and was whispering, "I didn't expect Natsu to be such a charmer." "You can't underestimate Natsu," Mira said, patting her head, and her gaze, whether intentional or not, slid toward the corpse of a fallen card user nearby. Meanwhile, Natsu and Gray, those 2 firebrands, finally noticed each other and immediately started listing each other's faults with exaggerated displeasure. "Any objections?" Urza asked, gentle and patient. They shut up at once, laughing and slapping each other on the back with a closeness that made even Alzak and Biska look reserved. "I actually thought about inviting Chess too, but something about that didn't sit right," Urza said, unexpectedly earnest. Everyone froze. "You really just say whatever pops into your head, Urza?" With the current lineup, they were already a terrifying squad. If Chess joined, survival rates for the rest of the guild might plummet. "I'm not much for teams, Urza," Chess said with a casual wave. "And besides, there are Natsu and Gray, 2 weaklings who could drag things down." He preferred working alone. With his card monsters and ambitions, he wasn't going to waste time on low-level missions. The future foes were going to be stranger and tougher than before, and he needed to take S-rank jobs at least. Only a handful in Fairy Tale could genuinely keep up with him. "Damn it, Chess!" "Don't act like we didn't hear that." Natsu and Gray shouted in outrage, itching to fight. They were ready to attack, but neither wanted to be the first to move. Lucy breathed a relieved sigh that Chess hadn't excluded her. Happy, ever blunt, added, "Lucy, are you so weak Chess didn't even bother to name you?" "Dead cat! You're the same!" Lucy shot back, furious. When Chess made snide comments about their weakness, everyone took it with a laugh. But if Laxus had said the same, the reaction would be very different. Their friends egged Natsu and Gray on. "If you're a man, prove it with strength. If Chess said that about me, I'd fight him to the death." Kana, returning to the fray, belched, slammed an empty wine barrel on the table, and yelled, "Hey, Natsu, Gray, don't you have any guts?" That was all it took. The 2 hotheads, defending their pride, charged at Chess. For a split second, the guild braced itself. and then Natsu and Gray lay on the muddy ground, each with a huge bump on his forehead, staring up at the sky as if admiring the clouds. Hysterical laughter broke out around them. Completely unsurprising, Mira said with a soft chuckle. Lucy giggled quietly. Urza only shook her head and sighed at her loud, lovable guildmates. Chapter 126, Unexpected Assassination, Skull Association. After the commotion, the heavy atmosphere Laxus had brought with him finally dissipated. Everyone crowded back around the temporary request board, picking suitable jobs and getting on with the work they'd been waiting for. The newly formed strongest team did the same. Fired up under Urza's leadership, they set out to strike at the magic cult operating secretly in Rubina's underground city. Before long, the noise died away, leaving only the clanging of construction outside the guild's temporary fence. "By the way, Chess, aren't you going to take a request?" Mira asked, setting a cup of black tea in front of Chess and a cup of fruit juice in front of Black Magician Girl. "I looked around," Chess said, taking the tea. "There's nothing I especially want to do." Makarov had already ordered that all S-class and higher requests be suspended until the new guild hall was complete. The lower-ranked jobs held no interest for him. The extermination requests were easy enough, the everyday errands boring, and the high-reward jobs that required endless time and trouble were simply not worth it. Please, he had assets in the hundreds of millions. A little extra reward wasn't going to matter. "You just want something that lets you fight your heart out, right?" Mira teased. "Haha, you know me too well." Chess took a sip of the tea. The flavor was rich and mellow, filling his mouth and warming him through. Our guild's tea is really something." Mira lowered her voice. "That's actually a prized batch the tea supplier gave to the guildmaster. Ever since that billion came in, he's been planning to upgrade everyone's quality of life. Better tea, better rations, better ingredients." Chess nodded. "So that's what the billion did, gave the guildmaster a lot of confidence." He thought inwardly. Of course, even in the world of magic, people mattered. This so-called treasured tea was definitely top tier. Maybe it was the setting, but it tasted even better than Jude's. The gleam in Mira's eyes evaporated at once. She'd risked being scolded by the guildmaster to sneak Chess the tea. Didn't that deserve more appreciation? Right. Speaking of requests, when are we going to release another Sorcerer Weekly photo album?" Black Magician Girl propped her chin on her hands. The last photos were so good. After the incident on Ermo Relic Island, the promotional posters tied to that location had been scrapped. Mira had wanted to move forward, but between managing the new guild construction and all the requests piling up, she had no spare time. "I haven't got a moment free right now," she sighed. "Then let Master help," Black Magician Girl suggested. She paused, then shook her head as if remembering something. No, Master is an idiot. Definitely can't." "Hey, you've been getting bolder," Chess said, flicking her forehead. "Want to go back to the dorm and find Master?" "Hiss!" Black Magician Girl shrank back, covering her head and pouting. When she saw her little sister hit, Mira's expression hardened immediately. The girl took advantage, transforming into a pink streak of light and diving behind Mira, sticking out her tongue at Chess. Since there was nothing else to do, after he finished his tea, Chess wandered over to the construction site, moved a few bricks, and checked the build quality. He'd studied civil engineering once, useful even in a world where magic made many trades redundant. Time passed quietly. By evening, Chess said goodbye to Mira and walked home with Black Magician Girl, chatting about guild matters. They were still a short distance from the front door when Chess's expression sharpened and his brows drew together. Something felt off. Not the hush of late night. There were still fishing boats on the river, their crews chatting and drinking close by. It wasn't the usual wary stillness of townsfolk avoiding him either. Someone had been spitting from a second-floor windowsill just moments ago. What struck him was the total absence of small life. No insects, no birds, no animals making a single sound. Even the background hum of Magnolia had fallen strangely silent. "Master, something's wrong," Black Magician Girl said softly. Despite her usual clumsy bravado, she'd trained in magic for years. Her senses were sharp. The quiet set her on edge. Chess smiled slightly. "Looks like we have uninvited guests." From the guild to their home, this type of silence had only appeared around them. Whoever it was had one target in mind. Phantom Lord remnants? Sabretooth? An old enemy? He walked on as if nothing had happened, while privately weaving a trap spell. Panic and running weren't his style. Black Magician Girl caught his eye, and pretending nothing was wrong, kept up a light conversation. Just as they reached the doorstep and Chess produced the key, the attack hit. A blade flashed with such speed it seemed to tear the air. Cold pierced the moment. Chess's pupils constricted. The strike had been almost instantaneous. Then, as if someone had pushed a pause button, the blade hung suspended a finger's width from Chess's throat, its cold light reflected in the quiet. Light spilled from a magic circle inside the dim living room. Golden lines braided themselves into a hexagram, a binding pattern that pinned the attacker in place. Through the gaps of the spell, Chess could see the assailant clearly. A woman in a white off-the-shoulder kimono, long pink hair blown by the gust of her leap. Her eyes, usually cold and deadly, shone now with a hint of surprise. She'd been caught. Chess glanced at the embroidered emblem at the hem of her kimono and smiled. "The mark of the Skull Association, an assassination guild," he said calmly. "Who put a bounty on me?" Chapter 27, Chess vs. Ikaruga. Kicked flying with one foot. Chess recognized the cold swordswoman sprawled on the ground in front of him. Ikaruga, one of the three crows, the Skull Association's special operations team. If she'd left the Tower of Paradise and shown up in Magnolia, then Ultir's attempt to save Jalal had failed completely. Chess wasn't surprised. After 8 years of brainwashing and manipulation, Jalal had been warped beyond easy repair. His obsession was baked into him. Not even Ultir, the architect of the original plan, could simply undo it. The original story had already shown how far Jalal had fallen. Why send assassins at all? Chess guessed Jalal blamed him for Ultir's change after she returned from Karuna Island. The Tower of Paradise was almost complete, and Jalal needed the Council's Etherean to finish the final step, the one part that still required Ultir's cooperation. That made Ultir's obedience crucial. So the man wanted Chess gone, the culprit, to force Ultir back to normal. He didn't come himself, he sent the three crows. Maybe he worried showing his face would expose the plan. Maybe he was simply looking down on Chess. If it was the latter, Chess felt the urge to give him a good slap in the face. "I didn't expect Mr. Chess to recognize the Skull Association. A great honor for this humble girl," Ikaruga said, tied up in the hexagram but calm, a dangerous half-smile on her lips. "As for who sent me, forgive me for not disclosing that. Oh, and by the way, I am Ikaruga of the Three Crows, Skull Association Special Operations." Bang! The moment she finished, the room filled with the smell of gunpowder. Flames roared to life as a muscular, bird-headed man rocketed in on a magic thruster, shouting, "And I am Owl, embodiment of absolute justice. Ugly monstrosity. Don't even think of getting close." Black Magician Girl shouted. She spun her staff and erected a pink defensive barrier between herself and Chess. But Owl was agile and seemed to anticipate her. He angled his thrusters, cut 90 degrees through the air, bypassed the shield, and dove straight for Chess. The impact was brutal. Street tiles flew, Chess was shoved backward, and the ground beneath him scored 2 deep grooves. Dust and rubble filled the air. He was about to be driven into the river and smashed against the buildings when he braced himself, slammed his palms against the thruster on Owl's back, and dug in. Veins stood out on his forearms. He let out a low roar and stomped down, crushing the hard riverbank rock underfoot. The backward motion finally stopped. What? Owl's bird eyes widened. Professional assassins like them had done their homework. They knew Chess's cards were his most unstable factor, and that his raw personal combat wasn't supposed to be his strength. Their plan had been simple: hit fast and prevent him from using cards. They'd counted on speed, and they'd overestimated it. Without giving Owl a chance to react, a magic circle flared, a heavy bronze glow washing over Chess's right arm as it shifted into the sealed one's form. His left hand still pressed against the smoking thruster. With his right fist wrapped in a card, he slammed it down. Boom, the thruster exploded, metal and parts scattered. Owl spat blood and collapsed at Chess's feet, cracking the pavement beneath him. "Your justice doesn't look so absolute now, does it?" Chess said, stepping on the unconscious Owl. "Master, well done. So cool." Black Magician Girl cheered, grinning and giving him a thumbs up. You shouldn't be turning your back on a professional assassin, lovely blonde miss. Ikaruga's cold voice cut through the dust. Black Magician Girl grabbed her staff, about to counter, but a single, chillingly precise slash struck first, cutting her in two. Didn't you get caught by Master's trap card? Black Magician Girl's sentence broke off as her damaged form shattered into points of starlight and returned to the deck. I am sorry. Fragile things cannot hold this humble girl, Ikaruga said, glancing down at the fragments of the hexagram clinging to her kimono. She sheathed her sword slowly and assumed a drawing stance. An invisible pressure settled over the street. Her movements were slow and elegant, but the slashes that followed were violent enough to seem like they could cut through space itself. Umetsuyu, Yashasenku. Chess looked briefly at the residential block across the river, then reacted. He reached into the air with his right hand and drew a huge shield from the glowing magic staff, the giant shield Garden Monster card, and held it up horizontally. The sword-slashed wind swept past them like a blade-filled hurricane. Even the afterwaves tore the river's surface and shredded the far bank into fragments. There was a sickening crack, and the shield Chess had conjured splintered. It seems, Mr. Ches, you are not as indifferent to the townspeople as rumor says, Ikaruga observed. She'd learned enough from Magnolia's residents to know how Chess operated. With that verified, the rest should have been easy. She flipped her blade, preparing for a wider, more destructive arc. Chess wasn't about to let her continue. A magic circle spun, and 3 light swords descended from the sky, their holy glow driving the shadows back and bathing the street in light. Ikaruga paused her grand slash and took the blade in a reverse grip, and your expression unreadable, swinging to meet the hovering blades. Swish, the light swords shattered into bright fragments that spun and drifted down. Those are Saint Light protective seal swords. They can seal an opponent's movements. A pity. They still can't stop this humble girl. Ikaruga started to boast, but pain cut across her words. Using the raining fragments as cover, Chess suddenly launched himself into the air and delivered a clean, powerful kick to her abdomen. He'd planned this. He knew information control better than she did. He knew her slash could cut through even Urza's armor. He'd expected her to break the protective swords. The Saint Light swords were a feint. The kick sent Ikaruga flying. Chapter 128, I'd rather die than be a burden to Brother Chess. Damn, after that powerful kick, Chess immediately regretted it. The wind sent Ikaruga flying straight into the direction of his own house. Boom. The fragile, detached home couldn't take the impact. Walls splintered, pillars snapped, and with one shudder, the little building collapsed into a pile of rubble, dust and smoke rising into the air. The fight had just turned into a disaster. Chess's mouth twitched. He felt a sting in his chest. Through the dust, a blade of light sliced the air. The clack of wooden clogs on broken stones came from the wreckage. Ikaruga walked out slowly, sword in hand, her usual lazy, indifferent gaze shadowed by gloom. Blood trickled from one corner of her mouth. The twin-circle hairstyle was tousled, and her once clean white kimono was dust-streaked and torn, clear signs that this assassin, all offense and little defense, had taken a beating. You barbarian who has not an ounce of gentlemanly manners, Mr. Chess, she said. Men like you will find it very difficult to get a girlfriend. I'm not the kind of nobleman who cares about such things when someone's trying to assassinate me, Ches replied with a smile as he stretched. That line, though, it somehow suits me. Ikaruga wiped the blood from her mouth and looked at Chess, who now stood in the center surrounded by 3 summoned knights. She sighed with regret. Unfortunately, this girl's assassination missions have never failed. You were meant to die tonight. Even as she spoke, she slowly sheathed her blade, not rushing to attack. The ambush had failed to finish Chess immediately. The card mage had reacted, and any prolonged fight here in Magnolia would only draw more fairy tale mages and doom the mission. If it had been a one-on-one duel, her confidence in her swordsmanship would let her take it. Here, she had to go to Plan B. Her eyes narrowed and a cruel smile twisted her mouth. Chess noticed the change and frowned. Then his pupils constricted. The 3 crows almost always acted together, but Vidaldus, the long-haired guitar man, had been missing from the ambush. Lucy lived nearby. Such a commotion couldn't have gone unnoticed. The possibility hit him like ice. Ah! A painfully terrified cry confirmed his worst guess. Vidaldus strode toward them from a nearby street, a twisted smile on his face. Beside him, Lucy's neck was bound tight by a coil of hair. Her face was contorted with pain as she struggled but couldn't break free. "You idiots! Do you know what you've done?" Chess's eyes snapped like a beast whose hide had been ruffled. Boom! A furious, dark golden magic power exploded from him, forming a chaotic storm that swept up dirt and rubble and flapped his coat. The street trembled under the force. "I actually didn't want to do this," Ikaruga said, forcing calm though beads of cold sweat dotted her brow. "But there's no other way, Mr. Chess. You're more troublesome than any target I've had before." The oppressive aura that rolled off Chess rivaled the power of S-rank mages. Ikaruga's composure shook. She had expected danger, but not this. Even Vidaldus, the rocker, stared as Chess's energy hit him. His grin twisted further, and the guitar in his hands began to emit serrated sound waves. This man was clearly enjoying the chaos. "If you don't want your comrade hurt, obediently give up resisting," Ikaruga said, taking a step closer. Her voice was low. "You have 10 seconds to consider." Chess's gaze flicked to Lucy, still bound by hair. He frowned, looking as if in agonizing dilemma, but the menacing storm around him held firm. Vidaldus laughed and took a step forward, the hair around Lucy's throat tightening. But Lucy, gritting her teeth, did not scream. She understood the situation clearly. They were here for Chess. She absolutely could not become a burden to Brother Chess. "Still not planning to give up, Mr. Chess? You only have 5 seconds left," Ikaruga pressed, closing the distance. "Or are you saying this young girl's life is meaningless?" Chess's storm of power began to calm. It seemed as if his aura receded. Ikaruga brightened. She reached for her sword's hilt, ready to strike the moment the magic dissipated and finish the job. "Damn, woman, what are you trying to do?" Vidaldus's voice cut sharp. Lucy's expression changed. Despite the pain and suffocation, she stepped forward, deliberately tightening the hair's hold on her own throat as she struggled. It wasn't to break free, it was to make the restraint worse. Want to make me a burden to Brother Chess? I'd rather die," she cried, her voice breaking, yet iron strong. The words rang out like a vow. Vidaldus froze. From the force in the hair, he could tell this frail woman was not bluffing. She truly intended to die rather than be saved if it would make Chess suffer. The cold-blooded assassin Ikaruga also showed an expression of stunned disbelief. Chess, however, remained eerily calm. A magic circle flared beneath his feet. Card magic. Ikaruga's face drained of color. She'd been watching Chess closely for exactly this sort of effect card, but how had he managed it so quickly, hiding the card's release under the storm of magic power? "He saw through my countermeasures and hid the card's fluctuations under that storm. He anticipated my anticipation," she thought, breath-catching. "Damn." "Umetsuryu," she started, gripping her sword to interrupt him, but Chess didn't give her the chance. "Trap card, position exchange activate," he announced. In an instant, Lucy felt weightless, a blink of vanishing gravity, and then she was in Chess's arms, held in a sudden princess carry. The knight Chess had been using as exchange material was torn to pieces by Vidaldus's constricting hair, sacrificed in the switch. "Chess," Lucy's eyes fluttered with relief as safety replaced terror. "Sorry, Lucy. I scared you," Chess murmured, soothing her gently. He glanced up at Ikaruga, and whatever tenderness had been there vanished, replaced by a glare of pure fury. "You dare make my little sister cry." "Prepare yourselves," he roared. Chapter 129. Chopai Lao, give me back my passion. The Queen Knight and the King Knight braced their swords and shields against the sword energy Ikaruga unleashed. There was no brilliant spark from clashing blades, only the dull, grinding sound of shields splitting inch by inch. Chess looked down at Lucy in his arms and said seriously, "Lucy, this enemy is really strong. Can you do me a favor?" "How can that be? An opponent even Chess isn't confident about?" Lucy blurted, then startled, she nodded hard. "I'm weak, so I might not help much, but I'll do my best." This was her first time fighting alongside Chess, and she wanted to go all out. Her eyes shone with resolve as she pulled the 12 zodiac keys from her waist. Open. Gold. Before the celestial spirit magic could take effect, a violent sense of weightlessness and a whistling gust wrapped around her. The ground fell away as Chess flung her straight up into the air. Startled screams escaped her, thrown skyward by Chess himself. This way, my hands are free, Chess said, stretching out his arms and clenching his fists. Lucy, flailing in midair, boiled over in indignation. So this was his idea of help. Chu Pai Lao, battle freak, give me back my passion. Even in the middle of the chaos, she couldn't help shouting her complaint. In that instant of lightning speed, Ikaruga had already cut the queen and king knights to pieces. She dove toward Chess, gripping her resheathed long sword. Umetsuryu, Garuda Flame! A ring of fire erupted, scorching the blade's path and turning the slash into a burning arc. Her signature move. Even if the flames were resisted, the follow-up cut would leave grievous wounds. But Chess did the impossible. He didn't dodge. He simply stood, slowly extending his bronze-colored arm. A card mage of modest combat ability actually intended to take that strike head-on? Ikaruga's arrogance snapped into fury. She reversed the flaming long sword and slashed at Chess's neck. Clang! Metal rang out as the Garuda flame was scattered by the impact, splashing outward and scorching the paving stones black. Chess's right fist was clenched in the circle of heat, using the sealed one's right arm to block the blade mere centimeters from his head. Ikaruga sneered confidently, until the chains holding the arm shattered. Inch by inch, the covering fell away like brittle glass. She was ready to cut Chess down. Then she froze. Dark red scales lay layered on the flesh of his exposed arm, gleaming in the cold moonlight with an unearthly sacred aura. That arm was tough enough to stop her slashing blow? No. Was her strike weakened? She felt a strange power at the tip of her blade, and her pupils widened as a realization dawned. I didn't underestimate your swordsmanship, Chess said calmly, his gaze steady. I used my strongest magic. A surge of dark red magic erupted from him. Sky dragons. Before she could react, Chess finished the incantation with a roar. Iron Fist. The wind of the punch ripped through the street like a rampaging dragon. The crushing force bent and twisted Ikaruga's invincible slashes until they shattered. Even though she had held the sword horizontally to block at the first instant, the residual shockwave kept pushing her backward. She skidded over 10 meters across the ground before the energy finally spent and her body stopped. Just one punch carries that much power. What kind of magic is this? She whispered, the sword trembling in her hands. The arrogance she had worn since the fight began was gone. Fear, rare and sharp, filled her eyes. This card mage not only possessed flawless combat control and unnerving reflexes, he also commanded terrifying destructive magic. What had Lord Jalal been thinking, sending them to assassinate something like this? Chess didn't press the attack. He reached out and caught Lucy, who would otherwise have fallen and been crushed. It was a cool, perfect move, but Lucy's gratitude was drowned by outrage. Lying in his arms, her eyes brimmed with resentment. Absolutely, she decided silently, she would never, ever fight alongside Chess again. Chess, Lucy, what's going on? Came shouts from two directions at once. Urza, armored and alert, and Mira, in a wine-red dress, ran up with puzzled expressions. Behind them, the rest of their Magnolia comrades arrived, a wave of fierce presence. Ikaruga clenched her lip. The failure of an assassination was unforgivable. She had never failed before. Still, she couldn't think of any way to salvage the situation. Survival instincts took over. She barked at Vidaldus. Vidaldus, retreat! Vidaldus, still dazed by Lucy's suicidal attempt, snapped back. Years of working with the Three Crows let him understand the command instantly. He frantically strummed the guitar slung over his shoulder, unleashing a piercing wall of sound wave magic. In that opening, Ikaruga pulled a smoke bomb from her chest and slammed it to the ground. Bang! Thick smoke billowed and filled the street. When it cleared, Chess and Lucy looked up. The street was empty. Owl, who had been knocked down earlier, and all three members of the Three Crows were gone. Chess, who were those people? Urza and Mira asked, taking in the ruined building and the battered scene with worried looks. People from the Skull Association, an assassination guild, Chess said, patting dust off his clothes. They called themselves a special ops team, the Three Crows. Chess wasn't in a hurry to give chase. In fact, he had purposely let them go. Fighting in Magnolia was too constrained. And for tracking, he'd already put one in place when he knocked Owl out with that first punch. Chapter 130, The Oppressive Presence of Fairy Tale's 3 S-Class Mages. Skull Association? Three Crows? If I'm not mistaken, that's a pretty notorious assassination organization among the Dark Guilds. Mira frowned. Chess, how did they single you out? When it came to guild relations, Mira was practically fairy tales encyclopedia. She knew things the others didn't. She also knew a lot of gossip about guild romances, though how much of that was true was another matter. They were hired, Chess spread his hands. Could it be Hosie's revenge? Lucy offered tentatively, guilt in her voice. It was the only motive she could think of. Jude Hartfilia had changed so much that it seemed unlikely he'd order an assassination now, but Phantom Lord had been one of Fiore's top guilds, and its members' interests were many and complicated. That shouldn't be it. Josie's locked up and Phantom Lord disbanded, Mira said. Whatever the reason, we can't just let them slip away. We need to catch them and question them thoroughly. Urza's face was hard. Attacking a comrade was intolerable to her. Luckily, Chess was strong. If their target had been anyone else, it could have been a disaster. Don't rush. Chess reached out and stopped Urza as she moved to pursue. I planted a spell on one of them. We'll talk after they leave Magnolia. Urza calmed and nodded. Understood. As expected of Chess, those guys picked the wrong target, Mira smiled. To think Chess would even consider the town's feelings. Only Lucy found something to pick at. Urza, Mira, why is it 4,099 meters? That's the distance from here to the outskirts, Chess said, deadpan. Being that precise makes it ridiculous. Lucy shot back indignantly, glaring. Soon more guildmates had gathered. Hearing that the cute newcomer Lucy had been bullied, while Chess was being ignored, everyone bristled, threatening to turn the Three Crows into something featherless. The force of that anger silenced the Magnolia residents who had been threatening to demand compensation from Chess. They quickly retreated indoors. Outside Magnolia, under moonlit trees, three figures streaked through the night. Their passing stirred wind and sent dead leaves swirling. It was a miscalculation. I didn't expect that one to be so troublesome. Ikaruga's face was tight, her eyes full of lingering fear and wounded pride. When Jalal had given them the mission, she had been confident. She'd killed S-class mages from ordinary guilds before. For the Three Crows to be fully dispatched, even with a backup plan, and still fail, was a humiliation she felt keenly. What now? Return to the Tower of Paradise? Vidaldus had released his magic state and looked like a composed general again. The contrast between his previous and current demeanor was stark. Let's go back. Since we accepted the job, we owe our client an explanation, Ikaruga said. Hopefully the intel we bring on Chess will satisfy them. In their line of work, credibility mattered more than anything. Understood. Vidaldus nodded. He noticed Owl, the bird-headed muscular man beside them, who had just woken but stayed eerily quiet. Owl, you okay? Owl, who usually talked the most, was staring into the night in a daze. Ikaruga's expression hardened and she stamped her heel, halting their flight. Vidaldus and Owl stopped close behind her. The night wind chilled the empty grassland. Are you all right? Vidaldus asked again. For a moment, Owl just looked blank. Then, in a sudden, altered voice, he declared dramatically, Your fate was sealed the moment you met me, who is full of a sense of justice. He surged forward without warning and threw a punch at Vidaldus. A thin, freezing swordlight sliced across Owl's chest before his fist reached. Blood sprayed as he crumpled to the ground. Hey, what the hell? Vidaldus cried, stunned. Isn't this obvious? Ikaruga returned coldly as she sheathed her sword. He's been controlled. Controlled? I didn't do anything to him. Vidaldus clutched his head in confusion. His own magic, rock and roll sleep demon, could sway people's wills with rhythm and turn them into puppets, but he wasn't responsible for this. Are you an idiot? I'm talking about Chess, Ikaruga snapped in exasperation. A rush of wind cut through Vidaldus's protests. From above, Chess, Mira, Urza, and Lucy dropped down from the backs of the Citadel Wing Dragon and the Curse Dragon. Seeing Owl slumped and bleeding, Lucy and the others stared in disbelief and outrage. This is how dark guilds operate, Chess said as he stepped in front of Ikaruga. I chose the most efficient method. Compared to this, other things are small matters. Ikaruga didn't even glance at Owl. She lifted her gaze to Chess. Tell me how you did it. Chess showed the magic card pinched between his fingers. I left a brainwashing magic card on him when I punched him. Ikaruga's shoulders slumped as if a weight dropped. I see. I'm convinced. A dark purple magic circle flared, and Mira shifted into her demon form, the air thick with an ugly power. You dared to lay a hand on my comrade, she said, stepping forward slowly. That isn't something you can wash away by admitting defeat. She would not let anyone who tried to assassinate Chess go unpunished. Urza unfurled a re-equipped magic circle and clad herself in Heaven's Wheel armor. Long blades hovered and began to rotate behind her like a halo of steel. Standing side by side, Fairy Tail's 3 S-class mages radiated an oppressive presence so intense it made even Lucy, still their teammate, draw on a breath. Ikaruga tightened her grip on her sword. Escape was impossible. She knew it. Her eyes sharpened, and she braced herself for a desperate fight. Chapter 131. Lucy, this guy is yours. Chess, Urza, you two take care of that guitar guy. This one's mine. Demon Mira smiled wickedly. Whether it was the influence of her Satan soul loosening her temper, or because the target was Chess, someone she cared about, she surprised everyone by calling for a one-on-one with Ikaruga. Oh, I couldn't help overhearing, Mira. Urza cut in immediately. That woman with the long sword looks stronger. All the more reason for me to go after her. Mira stretched and flashed a challenging grin. Chess, your magic power was only just unsealed. You should practice on that guitar, lunatic. Urza shook her head, the long blade of her Heaven's Wheel armor gleaming frostily. Don't underestimate me, Mira. Have you forgotten how pathetic you looked the last time I beat you black and blue? Heh, that was ages ago. Besides, you cried back then too, didn't you? That was because I had sand in my eyes. My face wasn't swollen either. Lucy gaped, utterly bewildered by the familiar back and forth. What was with this déjà vu? Chess quietly stepped back and murmured into her ear. Kana and the others said Urza and Mira's childhood was a lot like Natsu and Gray's. Huh? Urza and Mira? Lucy was genuinely surprised. She'd never heard that before and leaned toward Chess like someone ready to listen to juicy gossip. Just as she was about to pry, both Urza and Demon Mira shot glances their way. Chess! What do you think? They demanded in unison. Chess, what could he possibly say? Pick a side and get sliced by the other. Seeing his awkward face, Lucy burst out laughing, forgetting all about her curiosity. She covered her mouth and snickered mercilessly. Serves you right for messing with me earlier. Ahem. Well, Chess said, trying to be diplomatic. Why don't you two settle it with rock, paper, scissors? Self-preservation won out. Urza and Mira exchanged looks, grinned, and eagerly agreed. They clenched their fists and began to play, as casual as if they were kids. Ikaruga, who had been braced to fight, twitched at the sight. She could control her emotions like any professional assassin, but this was too much. What a joke! I'm the captain of the 3 Crows, she snarled, drawing her sword and lunging. Nice! I won! Someone cheered. Urza, having beaten Mira's scissors with a fist, spun to meet Ikaruga. Her long swords whirled behind her. Heaven's Wheel! Blade works! Blade light flashed as Urza and Ikaruga crossed. Then came the crack. Urza's long sword and parts of her Heaven's Wheel armor split and shattered with a chilling sound. This one! Urza's eyes went wide. She somersaulted back, quickly switching into her flight armor to gain distance from the calmly turning Ikaruga. So strong, Lucy murmured, failing to catch the details of that instant. No wonder Ikaruga had tried to assassinate Chess so boldly. Mira dispelled her defensive magic, shifting from demon form back to a gentler, older sister demeanor. Her expression grew serious. She wasn't truly worried about the novice Lucy, but Urza was likely in for a tough fight. A tense silence was sliced by a sharp, piercing guitar note. Vidaldus seized the moment, going berserk again, mouth wide, eyes wild, as he frantically strummed his guitar. Hear the rhythm from hell, become my puppet's fairy tale. Rock and roll lullaby. The visualized sound waves twisted the air, an insistent, controlling aura aimed straight at Chess. If they could seize the strongest Chess, everything could flip. The goddess of fortune might even smile on them. Their timing and intent were perfect, but raw strength made those plans useless. Chess, familiar with this magic, lifted a hand and manifested the Black Magician's shield, isolating the sound waves completely. Almost forgot about this guy, Mira muttered, rolling her eyes at the raving Vidaldus. What an attention-seeking fool, daring to do that in front of Chess and me. Inside the shield, Lucy spread her hands and shaded her forehead with a mockingly theatrical sigh. I can already picture how pathetic you'll look. Well said. Then this guy is yours. Chess opened a gap in the shield. This is a chance to test what you've learned from your black magician training. Get some revenge for being ambushed and kidnapped earlier. Don't embarrass your brother, okay? Before Lucy could protest, Chess nudged her out. Vidaldus was small fry, something Lucy could handle in a few minutes, and Chess had brought her here specifically for practical experience. I understand, Chess. I'll do my best. Lucy, having blinked away the last of her days, weighed her opponent for a moment and drew her whip. Besides proving her training, she wanted to be stronger. No longer someone others could threaten to get at her friends. Go for it, Lucy. Mira called from behind with encouraging warmth. Lucy glanced back and froze. Inside the shield, Mira and Chess were already seated side by side on an ornate carpet, tea and snacks neatly arranged in front of them. Card magic is really handy, Mira said, sipping steaming tea and smiling at Chess. But you really are looking out for Lucy, Chess. Aha, what can I say? I'm an old-timer at the guild, Chess replied, scratching his head with a grin. At that very moment, a certain beautiful girl who had just returned to the card space looked around for the bedding and refreshments that had vanished, stamped her foot in annoyance, and scowled. Chapter 132. Open the Gate. Gate of the Water-Bearer, Aquarius. While Chess and Mira lounged at their campsite chatting, Lucy, having finished her complaints, was already in combat mode. Open the gate. Gate of the Golden Bull, Taros. The golden key spun between her fingers and a brilliant magic circle blossomed. Woo! Lucy's body feels super hot. Taros, a hulking figure wielding a double-headed axe, erupted from the ground. His first words were about as subtle as his entrance. My master looks so good. Mira, Urza, and that big sister with the sword. When can you go on a date with me? Chess received nothing but a blank stare from the flirtatious bull. Mira covered her mouth, laughing. I didn't call him out for anything like that. Lucy, flushed with embarrassment as the master pointed across the clearing at Vidaldus. Hurry up! Take that guy down! I'd be delighted to serve you. Seeing his opponent was neither human nor ghost, Taros flexed, hefted his axe, and charged without a second thought. Sending such a useless woman to fight me, don't underestimate the power of rock music, you bastards! Vidaldus recognized Lucy instantly as a star spirit mage and grinned. Then his disgusting black hair shot out like living roots and snaked toward Taros. Without trying to dodge, the brute raised his axe and swung. Gusts like mini hurricanes whipped from the blades, but the hair was tough and flexible. The strikes barely cut it. Within moments, Taros was entangled, the hair tightening until his axe clattered from his hands. Damn it, why is this hair so annoying? He struggled, but the hair only wound tighter. Lucy didn't panic. A triumphant smile tugged at her lips. This was exactly the opening she'd been waiting for. Gate of the Golden Bull, close. And then, open the gate. Gate of the Crab, Keisha. Ding dong. Another magic circle flared. Before Taros's tokens of summoning faded, a sharply dressed man with 6 red crab legs and sunglasses made a flashy entrance. Keisha spun his scissors and sprinted along Vidaldus's still-reaching hair with lightning speed. Oh no! Oh no! Vidaldus yelped and reflexively covered his vital areas. Keisha, however, being a barber of questionable morals, aimed for swoosh. A cold edge flashed, and Vidaldus felt an icy sting. His head had been shaved bald. How do you like this most fashionable hairstyle? AB. Keisha snapped his scissors shut and struck a pose. Well done, Keisha. Operation Haircut. Success. Lucy gave a delighted thumbs up. Her plan had worked. Lure with Taros, then have Keisha cut off the opponent's obnoxious hair. Mira, popping a potato chip into her mouth, looked impressed. I didn't expect Lucy to have such a battle mind. Chess, watching more closely, added, her switching between gates and the connection gap is much smoother and faster than before. After only a few days following the Black Magician's training guide, the improvements were obvious. As the Heartfilia heir, she had talent. But Urza looks like she's in trouble over there, Mira added, turning toward the other skirmish. Across the field, swordlight flashed in a relentless dance. Each slash left a neat chasm in the earth. Ikaruga's Umetsuru was brutally sharp. Urza's armor was bending like paper. Even her strongest defense, the adamantine armor, couldn't hold against those cuts. Urza's face had gone grave. When the hard shell that protected a fragile heart failed, old panic and fear rose up again, the same ones she had left behind after the Tower of Paradise. This wasn't just a physical problem. It was a scar in her heart. Ikaruga, after a string of crushing victories, had her confidence back. Not all S-class mages of Fairy Tail were monsters like Chess. If Chess kept standing idly by, once she defeated Urza, she could bargain her way into something big. It was her only shot. Vidaldus, who was still reeling from his sudden baldness, shook his head wildly to a rhythm of roaring guitar sound. He had tried to use his rock-sleep magician trick to control Lucy directly. To his surprise, Lucy had hidden inside the independent space of Horologium, the clock's celestial spirit. Same as on Karuna Island. "Why am I always unlucky and meet control mages?" she grumbled. Horologium raised its slender arms and relayed Lucy's complaint in its hollow metallic tones. Remembering their last escape plan, Lucy, curled up inside the clock, instinctively looked toward Chess. Chess, chatting about Juvia with Mira at the campsite, seemed to sense something and quietly strengthened the protective shield. This fight was her training. Lucy wouldn't be allowed shortcuts. "So mean," Lucy protested through Horologium. Horologium shot a glance toward the berserk Keisha and said, Master Lucy, Keisha is already attacking." "Then why aren't you running away?" "Don't transmit my words like that at a time like this," Horologium protested. "The scissors! They're coming! Ah!" Lucy shrieked through the clock. "Stall for me. I'll force Keisha's gate closed." Horologium darted frantically across the battlefield with Lucy inside, chased by the manic barber while faithfully relaying Lucy's terrified commentary. The clock spirit was doing its best for a non-combatant, but after several close calls, it finally took a blow from the scissors and vanished with a bang. Lucy was ejected from the broken independent space and tumbled into a muddy puddle. Soaked and filthy, she ignored her condition, plunged the gate of the crab key into the mud, gathered all her magic, and shouted, "Close the gate! Gate of the crab!" Buzz! A split second before Keisha could strike, the golden circle closed and sent him back to the star spirit world. Damn it! Damn it! Why didn't I shave her head clean before going back?" Bald Vidaldus was furious. Losing his hair had landed him in a rage. All he wanted was revenge on Lucy. "I'm really sorry. Keisha only gives beautiful hairstyles," Keisha said weakly from the other side. Lucy touched the muddy water idly, and a wicked idea popped into her head. "Then I'll pull your hair out myself, one by one." "Don't even think about that," Vidaldus advanced, face hard. Lucy plunged her golden key into the puddle. "Open the gate, gate of the water-bearer, Aquarius." "Useless, useless, useless. No matter what star spirit you summon, they can only become my puppets." Vidaldus sneered and tried to use his rock sound magic to seize Aquarius as well. But Aquarius erupted from the mud with a fierce scowl. "How dare you call me out from somewhere like that, you bald bastard? I don't need your command to blast that stinky brat away." The controlled versus rebellious spirit raised her great water jug with a roar. Aquastorm! Water slammed outward with a thunderous whoosh. The unleashed flood tore across the field, sweeping up Lucy and the furious Vidaldus, uprooting trees and drenching everything in its path. The storm's range was enormous. Chess and Mira's campsite, and even the duel between Urza and Ikaruga, were caught in the torrent. Chapter 133. Chess, why don't you stay at my place tonight? Under the tree, the three crows lay tightly bound, unable to move. Vidaldus's eyes were rolled back. He'd already fainted from the full-force blast of water. Lucy, who had the advantage of having been submerged before, showed far greater resistance. She'd only suffered a minor bruise to her backside from Aquarius's lash. Fukuru's head hung limply. It was impossible to tell if he was dead or merely unconscious. Only Ikaruga, her clothes in disarray, remained conscious, her eyes glittering with hatred and resentment. "Who sent you to assassinate Chess?" Mira asked, hooking a finger beneath Ikaruga's chin. Her smile was faint but dangerous. For the interrogation, she had slipped into her Satan soul form. "It was my miscalculation that the mission failed," Ikaruga said coldly. "There's no need for theatrics. Do what you like. Kill me, skin me. I chose this line of work knowing it could cost me my life." She met Mira's gaze with stubborn pride. Assassins had rules. Jalal's confidence in sending them made sense. "Oh, you've got a stubborn mouth." Mira's lips curved. She flexed her demonified hand, ready to begin her questioning. Nearby, Chess pulled a strangely colored bottle from a card and handed it to the panting Urza. "Here, Stamina Booster Super Z. It won't heal injuries, but it replenishes magic." "Thanks." Urza didn't bother with formality. She drank it in one go. Aquarius's flood had made her reckless. Once she realized her friends were safe at her side, she'd stopped relying on her armor. She took out her chest-binding cloth of purity and with a single precise strike put Ikaruga down, defeating the enemy and pushing herself beyond her previous limits. "Lucy, you used a lot of magic just now, didn't you?" Urza said, halfway through her sip. She offered the demon-shaped bottle to Lucy. Lucy stepped back, waving her hands. "Huh? No, I'm fine. My magic's not drained yet." Urza didn't move. She kept the bottle in front of Lucy, watching her seriously. Lucy suspected this tasted awful, if even Urza couldn't stomach it, but she couldn't resist the look in Urza's eyes. 2.5 seconds later, she gave in and with a small sigh, took the booster. Pinching her nose, she took a tentative sip. Her face immediately brightened. The cool, refreshing liquid slid down her throat and she felt the fatigue unwind from her body. "Wow, this is great." Urza finally smiled and gave a thumbs up. Chess's products are always top-notch. "Thanks, Urza." Lucy finished the bottle in one gulp. "Shouldn't I be the one being thanked?" Chess murmured. Urza ignored him and turned back to the captured assassins. Under Mira's torture, Ikaruga had said nothing. "So what do we do with them?" "Lock them in a card and take them to the council," Chess said with a smirk, pulling out a blank card. The expression chilled Ikaruga. After years in the underworld, she'd seen terrifying things, and her mind supplied a horror show of being locked in a damp cell, bound in chains while some lecherous man approached. Just try it. No matter what you do, I'll never give in." Ikaruga barked, trying to mask her fear. Lucy rubbed her temple. "Do all assassins imagine the worst scenarios?" she muttered. Chess, she insisted, wasn't that sort of person. "If Mira trusts him, so do I," Urza said. For the kind of interrogation Chess could conduct with his cards, he was certainly more professional than they were. Mira surrendered her transformation and smiled. "If I say so, I have no objections." Ignoring Ikaruga's glare, Chess sealed the 3 assassins in the card and returned to Magnolia with Lucy, Urza, and Mira. After sending his companions off from the broken street, Chess lingered, staring at the ruins where his home had stood. Catching the 3 crows early had been a stroke of luck, but his little house was gone, reduced to rubble. The city would expect compensation for the damaged streets and buildings, and that cost would fall on him. It wasn't the money that bothered him. He had savings, and handing the captured assassins to the council would bring a nice bounty. The problem was practical. Where would he sleep tonight? "Ches, why don't you stay at my place tonight?" a soft voice asked from behind him, laced with a shy note. He turned. Mira stood there in a wine-red dress, moonlight softening the blush on her white hair. "It's late, the inns will be closed, and with everything that happened, it'd be safer to stay together." "I can sleep in the card space if I have to," Chess began. "Then it's decided. Let's go." Mira cut him off with a frown, took his hand, and started toward her house. She didn't give him a chance to refuse. Their palms touched, and Chess felt something subtle in Mira's expression. He thought about it a moment and said nothing. The walk was quiet. Mira didn't live in the girls' dormitory. She had responsibilities caring for younger siblings, so she'd rented a modest 2-story house on the edge of town. When they pushed the door open, a blast of high-spirited energy hit them. Elfman, who'd come back earlier, was in the living room lifting weights. "I'm home," Mira called, smiling. "Man, welcome back, Mira." "Pfft, Chess?" Elfman's eyes bulged. He nearly dropped the barbell. Before he could finish whatever he was about to say, Mira walked over, raised her hand in a practiced chop, and murmured, "Good night." Thud. Elfman, like a struck bell, sank into Mira's arms. "At least say hello," he mumbled before going limp. Chess helped lay him on the nearest sofa. Mira sat across from him. "You specifically brought me home," she said, settling down. "It can't be just about letting me stay the night, can it?" Chess didn't make a fuss. He rummaged at the coffee table for tea leaves, quietly preparing to boil water in the magic kettle. Mira watched him for a beat, then handed him the tea leaf box with a small, flustered frown. "Ah, and it's not because I'm worried about you being alone with that woman," she blurted, eyes flicking away. "Don't worry," Chess said lightly as he poured the leaves and poured magic into the kettle. "Her sword broke when she fought Urza. She can't hurt me." Mira's cheeks reddened. The room filled with the soft gurgle of the kettle, and an awkward silence settled between them. Chapter 134, Chess and Mira, attack the Tower of Paradise. After a few seconds of thought and steadying her nerves, Mira asked hesitantly, Ches, you already know something, don't you? Is this assassination really connected to Lucy? She had noticed something odd about Ches when she suggested taking the three crows back for individual interrogation. He could have done it right away. His hurried dismissal of the others only confirmed her suspicion. Ches most likely already knew who was behind it. You figured it out, huh? As I expected. Ches was startled at first, then let out a quiet sigh. So that was why he'd coaxed Elfman to sleep immediately. He didn't hurry to explain. After making tea for both of them, he spoke in a low voice. When I brainwashed that bird-headed man, I did get information about the mastermind. So it's not Lucy who's involved. It's... Mira trailed off. Urza. Mira's eyes went wide as she took the cup of tea, astonished. Urza? That's right. Things are pretty serious. Can you contact the guildmaster? I have an emergency magic crystal, she replied. Then let's wait for him to get here before we talk. Understood. Makarov, who had received the emergency message, arrived shortly in his silly pajamas that looked far too young for him. Chess handed him a cup of hot tea. After a casual sip to wake up, Makarov's face turned grave. Mira, tell me exactly what's going on. How is Urza involved with the assassination guild? Mira explained everything that had happened tonight on the way over. When she finished, she looked at Chess and said, Bring out the three crows and let them explain. Chess tossed a card, releasing the three crows who had been sealed inside. Ikaruga's indignant shout, You pervert, even if you use that disgusting, was cut off as another magic circle flared to life, resealing Ikaruga and Vidaldus into fresh cards and leaving only the dazed, brainwashed owl. Whether Ikaruga had held back or his luck was simply bad, he hadn't been finished for good, but for now only the owl remained to speak. Under Chess's command, the owl, still confused from the brainwashing, spilled everything he knew: Jelal, the Tower of Paradise, Zaref's soul, and the R system. The R system? Wasn't that completely shut down by the council years ago? Mira covered her mouth in shock. She'd heard of it, a project dug up 10 years ago by a cult to revive black magic, active in multiple locations. She hadn't expected such a dangerous thing to still be running, and nearly finished at that. Even Makarov, accustomed to crises, felt a chill. If the R system were completed, it would be a catastrophic blow to the current magical world. From the owl's words, this particular R system seemed to be the one where Rob had died and Urza had escaped. Mira, puzzled, pushed on. But why is Urza involved? When I was imprisoned during the lullaby incident, Mira said, Urza told me about her past. Chess set his teacup down and explained the connection between Urza, Jalal, and the Tower of Paradise. As he spoke, Mira's expression darkened. Makarov's brow tightened. He only knew the broad strokes. That Urza had escaped the Tower of Paradise with Rob's help, and not the deeper details. Urza had always carried the burden of her childhood companions, and she'd been terrified to even mention Jalal's name or risk involving Fairy Tale. Before the tower incident, she'd lived in constant pain and had even considered sacrificing herself for the safety of others. That makes things complicated, Makarov said. They couldn't simply allow Jalal to continue the R system. Because it involved Urza and other innocents, they couldn't casually take it to the council either, especially with Jalal's twin brother Chikalayan sitting among the council members. The three crows didn't know Chikalayan was Jalal. Actually, it's not that troublesome, Chess said, slamming his fists together. His eyes flamed. Let me go, Guildmaster. I'll tear that damn tower down. He hadn't acted against the Tower of Paradise earlier, partly because of delays from Ulu and Phantom Lord, and more importantly because he hadn't felt confident taking on Jalal. Jalal's celestial magic and speed, not to mention Saint Ten's power, made him a terrible match at Chess's previous level. A card could be activated and a meteor could reach Chess's face before he could react. But things had changed. Chess had mastered Godslayer magic of the Sky Dragon, significantly boosting his combat capability. He'd also gained hard-won experience fighting the Ice Flame Dragon. Between card magic, Godslayer magic, and abundant magic power, he believed defeating Jalal was now within reach. Chess, are you mad? Do you know how dangerous that is? Makarov snapped. A comrade's problem is the guild's problem. Chess didn't back down. Old man, you don't want to watch Urza keep living in that pain and blame forever, do you? That stopped Makarov. He sat silently, heavy with thought. Letting Chess go might be the only real option, but the risk was enormous. Seeing Makarov's worry, Mira spoke with quiet determination. Guildmaster, let me go with Chess. Chess immediately objected. No, Mira, you shouldn't put yourself in this. But he knew having an S-class teammate by his side would be far safer. Urza was obviously not the one to involve. Mistogan's whereabouts were unknown, and Laxus was still unreliable after his rebellion. Mira was the most sensible choice. If it weren't for Urza's help back then, I might still be out there, treated like a monster, Mira said. Her voice left no room for refusal. When she first came to Fairy Tale, shaken by the effects of her takeover ability, Urza had pushed her, through words and through fights, to become part of the guild. Urza's brutal kindness had helped Mira find her place. She couldn't stand by now while Urza was threatened. Makarov saw the resolve in his usually obedient Mira and felt a pang in his heart. He had to let her help. All right, he sighed, composing himself. I agree to the assault on the Tower of Paradise, but, he straightened, speaking seriously and earnestly, your safety must be the priority. Don't force yourselves. You must not act recklessly. Chess and Mira exchanged a glance and answered together, Yes, Guildmaster. Chapter 135. Battle. So cool. The next day, at the temporary bar counter next to the guild's request board, the so-called strongest team had gathered. Because they'd smashed a lot of public property during the requests they'd taken the day before, they hadn't received any reward, so Urza and the others were looking for another job to ease their tight finances. Lucy was particularly worried. Rent was due this month. Marcus, why are you running things today? Gray asked. Marcus, you're in Magic Weekly, Lucy exclaimed, surprised and pleased. She'd joined the guild only recently and had never really spoken with Marcus in person. As a newcomer to the guild, Lucy, I've heard a lot about you too, Marcus said, settling into the seat that should have belonged to Mira. He rested one hand on the counter, grinning. He was the kind of person who loved to chat. Even if you don't say it, I can imagine what some of those stories are. Lucy covered her face and gave a wry smile. Yeah, I know. Pretty embarrassing stuff. Hey, Marcus, you still haven't answered my question. Where's Mira? Gray, feeling ignored, sounded annoyed. Marcus waved him off. First, maybe you should put some clothes on. What? When? Gray sputtered. Marcus went on. Mira went out early this morning with Chess. They went to deal with the Dark Guild, the Skull Association. Something like that happened last night. The Guildmaster wanted Loki to handle it, but that guy hasn't been in good shape lately, so I took over. Natsu's ears perked up. Assassination Guild? Skull Association? Chess went out to pick a fight? He and Happy lived in a little wooden house outside Magnolia and hadn't heard about the Three Crows attack the night before. Lucy hurried to explain. It wasn't a fight. Someone tried to assassinate Chess. A flash of realization crossed Lucy's face. Wait, Chess and Mira teamed up? Her shout drew the attention of everyone around the counter. Ha! With those two monsters teaming up, there's probably no team in the guild that could stand against them. Poor Natsu and Gray. Your title of strongest team lasted all of one day. You can't say that. In terms of raw power, Laxus and his Thunder God tribe aren't weak either, just annoying. Man, what actually happened last night? How did my sister get taken? Someone called. Something's going on, people chorused, tongues wagging. Except for a confused elfman, everyone else was teasing and cheering. Damn it, they teamed up secretly. Urza, let's go take an S-class request right now. We can't let them surpass us, Natsu shouted, already forgetting the assassination angle in his desire to compete. Are you an idiot? The guildmaster said S-class requests aren't available during the guild's reconstruction, Gray snapped, mocking Natsu in their usual way. Then he turned to Urza with a grin. Let's take 3 requests at once. No, 5. Refusing to be outdone, Natsu and Gray were perfectly in tune. Aye, I'm fired up, Happy announced. That's right. Work, work, Lucy chimed in, thinking only of the money. Urza, however, looked serious. Vengeance was natural, but this was a dark guild with considerable power. They needed to report to the council and wait for official instructions first. Besides, Chess's decision to interrogate the Three Crows alone the night before had struck her as odd. Without answering Natsu and Gray, Urza stepped up to Marcus. Where's the guildmaster? He went to the council with the Skull Association members, said he wanted to see how the councilors would react, Marcus answered, puzzled. I don't usually see the old man being this proactive. Urza's brow tightened. The hasty decisions, the reversed order of things, something didn't feel right. She had a strange, prickling suspicion that the guildmaster, Chess, and Mira were hiding something from her. Natsu, Gray, we won't take any requests for now, she said. Then she called to Elfman in a tone he couldn't refuse. Elfman, come here. You said Chess came by your place last night? Far to the south of the kingdom of Fiora, on the continent of Salem near the coast, powerful deep blue wings cut through the clouds. Ches was in front, Mira clinging behind him as they rode the back of the Citadel winged dragon. The oncoming hurricane made their clothes snap and billow. They had learned the exact location of the Tower of Paradise from the Three Crows. According to Owl, Jalal had placed a shielding magic around the tower, something like the barrier around Tenru Island, so it couldn't be detected by normal observation. The shield would only be lifted when the Tower of Paradise was completed, when the tower was exposed to the council and charged with the Spirit King's power. The magic was weaker than Tenru's, though, and it had a deadly side effect. Birds and fish in the sea near the tower were dying in strange ways. By the way, Chess, do you have an infiltration plan? Mira called over the wind. Her white hair streamed in the gale, and every bump of the dragon made her wrap her arms tightly around Chess's waist to keep from being thrown off. Chess could feel the warmth of her close beside him. Don't worry, I made a plan before we left. He leaned close and spoke where she could hear. We land at the entrance, fight our way up, and go straight for Jalal's head. Jalal was cautious by nature. If the Three Crows hadn't reported back, he would already be preparing for possible failure or exposure, so a surprise attack probably wouldn't work. Still, they were here. They couldn't pass up a chance to get cards and improve their strength. In a world where magic springs from the heart, too many doubts only held you back. Battle! So cool! Let's do it! Chess added, almost grinning. Ara, that's a thorough, detailed plan, Mira said, narrowing her eyes, a delighted smile spreading across her face. She couldn't hide her excitement. Then, is it okay if I go a little wild? If Chess was at her side, she didn't have to worry about accidentally injuring teammates. In other words, once the innocent laborers at the Tower of Paradise were out of the way, she could freely use the move the Guildmaster had forbidden her to use, without holding back. Chapter 136. The Battle Begins. As they crossed the lifeless sea, a tall, slender structure quickly came into view. The tower rose from a small island, tapering as it climbed to nearly 1,000 meters. Thick, dilapidated, rusted pipes were woven across its exterior like iron vines, stuffed with all manner of scrap and debris. It looked less like a planned building and more like something hastily cobbled together by amateurs, utterly devoid of architectural grace. Is that the Tower of Paradise? It doesn't match the name at all. I expected something like an amusement park, Black Magician Girl said, popping out early and hovering beside the Citadel winged dragon, her body glowing with pink flight magic. There wasn't room for 3 on the dragon's back, so she didn't sit. The real name is the R system, Mira replied, studying the tower. And honestly, its look is kind of interesting. Black Magician Girl scratched her head and gave an awkward laugh. Despite years of exposure to black magic, she still preferred all things cute and pink. Mira, are you ready to cause a big stir? Chess rose slowly, his eyes alight with fighting intent. His dark cape unfurled behind him, snapping in the cold, high-altitude wind. Enhancement magic cards, Book of Secret Arts, Pot of Greed, hovered about him, pushing his status to the maximum. We can start anytime, he said. Mira stood as well. Crackling arcs danced across a magic circle that spilled a dark purple beam. When it faded, Mira had already taken on her standard Satan soul, shrouded in a mocking, malevolent aura. Then let us give the enemy a warm greeting, companions. Chess raised his right hand. The card pinched between his fingers flashed brilliantly. The Citadel winged dragon seemed to understand and gave a low roar before plunging toward the tower. A blue streak tore across the sky and smashed into the entrance at the tower's base, exploding into a cloud of dust that shook the whole island. Debris rained down. The commotion sent guards and laborers inside the tower into immediate alarm. Enemy attack! Everyone to arms! Guards at the entrance hurried together. They wore dark armor, their weapons glinting coldly beneath steel helmets that hid hungry eyes. Most of them were zealous followers of Black Magician Zareth, fiercely loyal to Jalal and committed to completing the R system. As the smoke cleared and the attackers' true forms came into view, the guards froze. Before them stood a 10-meter-tall rock giant, a blue flying dragon with a mouth full of ape-like teeth, a white bone demon with icy eyes, a yellow dragon armored in bony spines that spewed hellfire, and a small, deceptively cute girl hovering in the air. And in front of those monsters stood two humans whose magic power burned like hell. I know that one. That's Chess, an S-class mage from Fairy Tail, someone shouted. What on earth is happening? Has Fairy Tail come to attack? Is the Tower of Paradise plan compromised? Teams 1 and 2, stop them. I'll report to Jalal and the Lords. The guards snapped into formation, but they were too slow. The rock giant's sword came down like a mountain, shearing through iron pipes and cleaving the platform in two. The shockwave sent guards flying in all directions. Before they could regroup, the cursed dragon's hellfire surged forward, a roaring blaze that lit up the gloomy sea. With that, the Battle of the Tower of Paradise officially began. Mira sighed, half amused. Oh dear, I think I summoned my receptacle magic a bit early. With only a few moves, the first wave of resistance was already flattened, guards thrown unconscious across the shattered ground. Chess clapped his hands and, as magic light flashed, collected the insensate soldiers into cards. We'll hand them over to the council for interrogation later, he said casually. He didn't have time to sort innocents from the complicit. They'd take them all. Mira smiled, noting Chess's little habit. So this is why we started at the bottom and worked our way up, she mused. He said we'd fight on sight, but this plan is very thorough. She trailed off, fondness evident in her tone. A weak voice cut through the moment. A group of sallow-faced people peered from behind a rock, clutching shovels and picks. Laborers, captured and forced to build the tower. Their wrists still bore magic restraints that bound their freedom. Chess looked them over. Compared to the emaciated faces he had seen at other attacks on the tower, these people looked better nourished, but the restraints on their wrists were unmistakable. He couldn't tell how Jalal had treated them before. In past incidents, when the completed Tower of Paradise had been attacked, such laborers had not been present. Who are you people? One of them asked, wary. We're here to free you, Chess said. He stepped forward and shook the blank card on his fingertip. If you trust me, come into the card. The laborers bristled. They'd been promised by Jalal that their work would end in half a month and they'd be allowed to go home. After years of bondage, they weren't about to rush into a stranger's offer. While they hesitated, the bright magic of Chess's cards swept over them. Sorry, I forgot to mention, whether you want to or not, you're coming in, Chess added, giving them a reassuring smile through the card. Inside the card, reactions were mixed. Some screamed in panic. Devil! This man is a devil! Others tried to figure out how to escape. How do I get out of here? And a few resigned themselves in despair. It's over for me. Goodbye, my childhood sweetheart back home. At the same time, a number of laborers, convinced they'd finally been rescued, began to dance and shout with relief. Chess closed the card and tucked it away. The first defenders of the tower had been neutralized. Now the real ascent could begin. Chapter 137, Overwhelming Power and the Truth Boom. Boom, boom. Explosions rolled through the Tower of Paradise one after another. From the outside, sparks, electric light, and energy beams leapt skyward in a visible column. Under the relentless assault of Chess's card summons, the tower's defenses were utterly exposed. It was a one-sided rout. Mira, itching for battle, slammed through every opposition with ruthless efficiency. Hardly anyone could survive 2 exchanges with her. At the top of the tower, in the dim command room, Jalal stood cloaked and grim, staring into the magic crystal projection where Chess strolled as if enjoying a walk. 3 useless pieces of trash, he muttered. The assassination failed, and they exposed this place to the world. A smile that never reached his eyes twisted his face. But the result isn't all bad. Someone knew the tower existed, and instead of telling the council, came here to die. Foolish. or arrogant enough to think they could beat me, Chess Linadoga? Earlier, his clone Chikalayan had received word that Makarov had brought the three crows to the council and had simply explained what happened, leaving out any mention of the tower. Jalal had been relieved they hadn't blabbed the secret when Chess attacked. Now, having decided to solve things his way, he'd ordered his childhood comrades to act. He turned from the crystal to the four figures waiting for his command: the resentful Hugh, Simon with his eye patch and steel jaw, Miliana in her cat costume, and square-faced Wally Buchanan. They'd been Urza's closest childhood companions. "You all know the situation," Jalal said coldly. "The invaders are from Fairy Tale, the guild Urza joined. Even now, Urza won't let us be free." Pain twisted his features. Hugh's resentment snapped outward. He bared his teeth, crimson eyes wild. "Unforgivable. That traitor who abandoned us." "She won't even face us herself?" Wally said, voice hard. "Urza has changed into someone I barely recognize." Miliana's eyes dulled as memories of the past surged up. She couldn't accept this cruel reality. Simon said nothing, his face tight with anger. "I'll kill her. I'll kill those two intruders." Hugh spat, and the four of them surged forward without hesitation. Only after they left did Jalal let the sorrow fall from his face and reveal what he truly was. "Before I recall my clone, stall them for me," he said to no one in particular. Altair had to be broken and remade into a believer who would follow him even unto death. To resurrect Zareth and forge a free magic kingdom, Chess had to be eliminated. There was no other way. He would not hesitate to sacrifice pawns like Hugh and the others. Explosion after explosion climbed higher through the tower, and by the time Chess and his companions reached the upper levels, there was almost no resistance left. Most guards and hundreds of laborers had already been collected and sealed into cards. "It's unbelievable Urza grew up here," Mira said, looking at the dark, tangled inner structure with a solemn expression. "Whether ordinary magic or the black magic people fear, both are paths toward the top of the art," Black Magician Girl murmured. "The Zareth cult that built this R system is monstrous." After the upheaval, all the card summons, except her, were drawn back into Chess's deck as they pushed on toward the summit, beating down any stray guards that popped up. Chess was eager to see Jalal's face when he learned that the Zareth he wanted to resurrect was currently the Emperor in nearby Alvarez. What would that do to Jalal's plans? They came to a wide corridor near the top and were stopped by four silhouettes. Hugh's eyes flooded with bloodlust when he saw them. Without a word, he charged through the magic circle. Chess let out a soft sigh and let his magic power flare, creating an afterimage as he vanished from sight. A muffled bang and a spray of dust marked his absence. "If I'm not mistaken, you're Hugh, the brother Urza mentioned?" Chess's voice came from nowhere. He seized Hugh's head and pinned it to the cracked floor with casual strength. "Can you calm down now? Don't say her name!" Hugh thrashed, trying to use a card on Chess. A faint glow flashed as a magic circle activated, and before Hugh could gloat, Chess vanished into a card that dropped into Hugh's hand. Hugh laughed, proud of trapping an S-class mage. He held the card up, gloating, not noticing Mira and Black Magician Girl trading looks as if at a fool. Then Hugh's fingers tightened on the card as he tried to tear it apart. Inside, Chess snapped his fingers. A dark, golden magic circle bloomed, and Hugh blinked out, replaced by a card with a black and gold vortex on its back that floated to the floor. Chess reappeared in reality, pinching the new card between thumb and forefinger and watching Hugh struggle helplessly within. "You came to amuse me," he said. Wally, Miliana, and Simon froze. Hugh's card had been reclaimed. His opponent's mastery of card magic far surpassed Hugh's. Wally reacted first. "Simon, attack!" Wally's right arm transformed into a massive cannon barrel, and he fired, building a single focused shot. Simon stepped forward without hesitation and intoned, "Dark magic moment." A curtain of pure black poured from his circle, folding the air into an impenetrable void that swallowed light and sound, enveloping Chess and his companions. Black Magician Girl only laughed. "Black magic? You couldn't be more unlucky." Perched on her staff, she imitated Chess and snapped her fingers. Magic flared, rending the compacted darkness of moment as if it were paper, and an even deeper, broader shadow exploded outward, swallowing sight and hope for a heartbeat. Then it faded. Black Magician Girl, who knew the entire truth from Chess, had no intention of pressing the advantage. She simply wanted to show off. The display left Simon wide-eyed and terrified. His dark magic had been shattered so easily that he felt the ground fall from under him. "Impressive, isn't it?" Black Magician Girl preened. "If you want lessons, I can teach you." Wally's cannonball, charged and speeding, tore toward her like a comet. Her eyes widened, but before the shot hit, Mira's demon wings unfurled. With a single domineering motion, she intercepted the cannonball, grabbing the blazing projectile in the palm of her hand. The blast detonated there, fire and light filling the corridor. Mira shrugged the smoke from her hand and smiled, unscathed. "You were Urza's childhood companions," she said. "I don't want to hurt you. Give up this pointless resistance and let us pass." Miliana snarled, hatred burning in her voice. "Don't pretend to be kind. That traitor Urza sent you to kill us." Wally's tone was bitter. "Urza abandoned us for her own freedom once. She'd do the same again." After seeing the gap in strength, Wally had accepted his fate. Mira's smile vanished. Magic power whitened the air around her as she grew cold and hard. No one knew better than she how Urza treasured friends. She couldn't believe Urza would betray them. "Wait, Mira." Chess steadied her with a hand on her shoulder and let her temper cool. He walked forward, twirling the card that held Hugh between his fingers as he approached Miliana, Wally, and Simon. "Do you want to hear a different version? One I heard from Urza herself?" Chapter 138, Chess vs. Jelal, the might of the Sky Dragon's illusion. Middle floor of the Tower of Paradise, the prison area. Hugh used his card magic to package the last batch of laborers and guards and send them away. There's nobody else left in the tower," he said, handing the cards to Wally. His eyes still flashed with madness and hatred, but the target of that hatred had shifted from Urza to Jelal. "You all go ahead. I'm going to kill Jelal." Under Simon's solemn explanation, he who had shared the same wounds and memories, Hugh finally snapped awake. He believed Mr. Chess's truth and realized that all their misfortunes traced back to Jelal. He thought of his gentle, strong sister Urza, who had borne everything silently and kept moving forward. For a long moment, it was unbearable. He wanted to tear Jelal to pieces. Miliana and Wally bowed their heads in defeat, saying nothing. It was obvious Urza was the least likely to betray them, and Simon's testimony was steady, but for them, the betrayal cut deep. "Wait, Hugh." Simon finally reached out and seized Hugh by the arm. "Believe Mr. Chess, we must evacuate the Tower of Paradise now." What made Simon decide to stand and tell the truth about that year was the overwhelming combat power Mr. Chess and Mira had displayed. Those two, Urza's present companions, might actually be able to beat Jelal. "What are you talking about? This is our affair. I'm not leaving." "Enough, Hugh. How long are you going to be a fool?" Simon's rare anger broke free. "Do you still refuse to believe the people Urza trusts? If we go there now, we'll just get in the way of Mr. Chess and the others." Hugh, Miliana, and Wally froze at the sudden roar. After so many years together in the Tower of Paradise, this was the first time they'd seen Simon, usually even-tempered, so furious. "If I had the power, do you think I'd run? More than any of you, I want to kill Jelal with my own hands for Urza." Hugh shouted, looking up at the ceiling. His single eye bloodshot, fists clenched, he trembled. "But I'm useless. Countless nights I've hated my weakness." "Can you feel this heart-wrenching pain, Hugh?" Simon demanded. "Hugh, let's get everyone out first." Miliana murmured weakly. "Even if it pains us, it's the best way we can help." Wally sighed. Damn it! Damn it!" Hugh fell to his knees, pounding the floor until his hands bled. Only then did he begin to calm down and accept the reality. Quickly, the small group retreated to the lower floor and prepared to leave the tower by boat, leaving the battlefield to the strong. Top Command Hall. The faint blue glow of the magic crystal gave the room a cold wash of light. Steady, confident footsteps echoed through the spacious silence, approaching from afar. Jelal sat on the high seat, one leg crossed, his hand supporting the side of his face marked with crimson sigils. His gaze was casual as he watched the man who walked slowly to the center of the hall. "Welcome to my paradise," Jelal said lightly. "Did you enjoy the tour, Mr. Chess?" Mr. Chess stopped and stretched, then smiled. "Too ordinary, not even a warm-up." "As arrogant as the rumors say," Jelal muttered. His eyes flicked to the empty space behind Mr. Chess. "Where's Mirajane?" There were cameras everywhere inside the tower, but after Mr. Chess and Mirajane separated from Hugh and the others, Mirajane had vanished into a blind spot, as if she'd evaporated. Who knows? Mr. Chess answered with a mysterious smile, shrugging his shoulders. Jalal was unmoved. He hadn't expected a confession and wasn't overly curious. His expression hardened, and he got straight to business. Undo the magic on Altair now, and I'll pretend nothing happened. So it was Altair's sudden change that had tipped things off. Mr. Chess had suspected as much when the three crows appeared in Magnolia, so Jalal's demand did not surprise him. But if this was the reason, was he being framed? What if I don't undo it? Mr. Chess asked. Jalal's eyes went cold. I'll kill you, and then I'll make Fairy Tale disappear from Fiore. Compared to the hypocrisy of the council, you're refreshingly honest, Chikalayan. No, Jalal, Mr. Chess said with a laugh. Those words hit a nerve. Jalal's carefully maintained disguise, his thought-body concealment, had even fooled the old council members. How had this man seen through it after only one meeting? Shock flickered across Jalal's face before it hardened into killing intent. He didn't know how much Altair had revealed, but he could not let Mr. Chess leave alive. Not when the resurrection of Zareth was his supreme goal. Slowly, Jalal rose from the high seat. Golden magic power surged around him. Mr. Chess didn't flinch. He stepped forward and unleashed his own power. A dark gold storm met Jalal's radiance head-on, a pressure that made the command hall itself tremble. Debris and residue suspended in the air as the energies clashed, then fell back when the balance wavered. Meteor! Jalal made the first move, becoming a streak of golden light and darting at Mr. Chess. He wanted to end the fight swiftly, wary of card magic. What he didn't know was that Mr. Chess had anticipated the heavenly body magic. A magic circle lit on Mr. Chess's right arm. He planted his feet and swung the sealed one's right arm straight at the incoming golden light. Their fists met midair, creating a destructive hurricane. Mr. Chess lost his balance and pitched forward. Then Jalal vanished. Too slow, Jalal's mocking voice came from behind. Mr. Chess turned. A hexagram of golden light outlined by a card's trap card had flared under Jalal's feet, the hexagram's curse. The seal activated, forced interference that interrupted the light magic Jalal was brewing. As Jalal hesitated, the floor cracked. From the falling debris rose a giant rock soldier, twin stone swords spinning as it struck down with brutal force. The impact drove into the ground, but Jalal, unmoved, split into flecks of golden light and reformed in the air. He swung out a flurry of light magics that shattered the rock giant, then dove back at Mr. Chess. Meteoric light crashed around Mr. Chess in a barrage of explosions. Jalal gave a victorious smile until flames burst through the smoke. The curse dragon, cloaked in roaring flames, soared up, its wings flapping as it drove a wave of heated air toward him. Jalal, one of the 10 wizard saints, reacted fast. He poured light magic into his fist and crushed the fiery beast into shards. Beastly fragments scattered. It was a trick. Hidden in the flames, Mr. Chess punched out, his blow smashing into the side of Jalal's face. Jalal was sent hurtling and crashed onto the very high seat he'd occupied, sending debris everywhere. Mr. Chess had landed his strike, but a beam of light erupted from the ground. Jalal had restrained the earlier meteor attack. Rumble. 2 explosions tore through the hall, smoke curling and then slowly clearing. Their first exchange ended inconclusively. Neither had gained the upper hand. Not only is his card magic far beyond that waist hue, Jalal muttered as he stalked from the smoke, wiping blood from his mouth, but he's got real reaction speed and technique. You're not bad yourself, Mr. Chess replied, casually touching a shallow wound on his arm. A speed type like Jalal was a far different threat from Jose, another Saint 10. Mr. Chess had several times wanted to use more complex card combinations, but Jalal's speed had made it impossible. The warm-up's over, Phase 2, Jalal. Mr. Chess hooked a fist in the collar of his cloak and pulled hard, baring his muscular torso. Heh, it's been a while since I've met an opponent like you. Jalal returned the gesture, tearing off his own cloak. He wore a black, tight, short-sleeved undershirt, but the muscle contours were clear and threatening. Strong fighters needed no words. Their last exchange had already earned each other's respect. The fight that followed would be fierce. Boom. Mr. Chess activated his God Slayer magic. Dark red scales ghosted across his skin and the side of his face. A rolling tide of ominous power condensed around him into the majestic illusion of a sky dragon. Ancient lost magic like Natsu's fire dragon? No, what is this? Jalal's pupils widened at the sight. The sky dragon's image struck him like a blow. His nervous system tensed under the unfamiliar pressure. He poured every scrap of his magic power into resistance. In the golden-lit air above, Jalal launched first. Crossing his arms, he focused power into his palms. A pitch-black sphere flecked with stars expanded, wind tearing around it, shadows stretching away. It was Abyss Break, the heavenly body magic that had once killed Simon. Show off all you want. If you can take this, take it. Jalal roared and hurled the nearly 3-meter black sphere directly at Mr. Chess. Abyss Break. Swallow everything. The void itself shredded beneath it, floor tiles, concrete, steel, any matter in its path powdered into nothing. Mr. Chess stood firm, rotating the black magician's staff in his hand. While his Godslayer power prepared him for close combat, he could still counter with magic when needed. Black, magician, he called. Dark, profound energy crackled at the staff's tip. A dark purple sphere, an echo of Abyss Break in shape, fired from the staff, trailing electric arcs. Under the double enhancement of his exclusive magic card and Godslayer state, it was far more terrifying than ordinary black magician spells. The two spheres homed in on each other, drew together, and collided with a deafening bang. Rumble. Wind screamed. Thunder rolled. A violent energy impact tore through the room. The top floor of the Tower of Paradise was crushed into powder as a dark purple beam shot upward and ripped through the ceiling. The shockwave shook the tower, sending debris and rusted pipes tumbling toward the sea below. Chapter 139, God's Wrath. A dark purple beam rent the clouds, making the already brooding sky even heavier and more oppressive. Lightning lashed the sea, whipping up towering waves and lending a doomsday grandeur to the otherwise deathly quiet waters. This was a fight between two Saint Ten, unrestrained, raw magic power colliding and warping the world itself. The sky, the sea, even the air trembled. It was, in every sense, earth-shattering. On the tossing deck of a small boat, Simon stared at the top floors of the Tower of Paradise, shattered and blown away, his heart pounding. After 8 years of waiting, this was the first time he had seen Jalal's true strength up close. Even more astonishing was that Urza's companion, Mr. Chess, was holding his own against him. The fight's only just started, Wally muttered, stunned. Miliana hugged a pile of cat dolls to her chest and trembled. So scary, meow. What'll happen next? She'd brought every cat doll from her room. A thunderous boom cut through their fear. 2 streams of light, one red, one gold, erupted from the ruined tower top, scattering falling stones as they chased each other through the ink-black sky. Chess and Jalal moved so fast, Simon and the others could only hear roaring air. They couldn't follow their silhouettes with the naked eye. After another flurry of impacts, the golden light and the red dragon phantom split apart and hovered, each retreating a safe distance to face the other. Jalal's eyes narrowed. What kind of magic is this? He thought. He can actually dampen my magic power? And that right arm, its strength is growing. Both men were breathing hard after a brutal exchange. Blood and bruises streaked their bodies. Neither was in great shape, but the power each displayed left no doubt why Jalal had become a Saint Ten and a council member. If he'd fought this man before Jose, the outcome might have been very different. Chess! Jalal! Magic flared again as they charged. For a moment, Jalal's movements slowed, either because he was overly cautious about Chess's magic or because he had another plan, and Chess seized the opening. He drove a Sky Dragon's iron fist into Jalal's face, blasting him from the sky into the Tower of Paradise below. Stone and steel exploded outward. When the smoke cleared, Jalal stood amid the rubble, spitting a blood-stained broken tooth. A twisted smile crossed his face. Heh, just in time. Along Jalal's previous trajectory, golden magic circles ignited and linked, tracing the pattern of a constellation and bathing the horizon in a blinding radiance. This is unavoidable, all-directional. Accept the judgment of the 7 stars, 7-star sword. A cascade of golden light, dense and destructive, rained down, sealing off every escape. Ches, calm, planted his foot and revealed his counter. A trap pattern bloomed at his feet. Holy barrier, mirror force. A wall of holy light flared up and reflected the storm of 7-star sword back. Jalal's eyes widened as the reflected golden torrent slammed toward him, detonating in a deafening blast. He shoved through the shock and formed a hand sign, trying to dispel the returned holy light. Chess twisted and thrust out his right arm. The magic circle spun and pooled into a Sky Dragon phantom. Heavenly body magic, 6-star, he called. Sky Dragon's thunder-summoning bullet. 6 meteors burst forth from the golden circle, but lightning-like bullets arced out and intercepted them. On impact, they mimed destruction, not in the sense of shattering, but of erasing the meteors themselves. The golden magic circle dissolved before it fully formed. Jalal's pupils narrowed in disbelief. Chess's magic could weaken opponents, amplify himself, and now neutralize heavenly body summons? Even Jalal, calm and seasoned, felt something like panic. In 20 years of the magic world, he'd never seen anything like it. "No," he roared. 8 years of preparation. This world of magic and freedom is within reach. I won't lose. He unleashed another surge of power. With a blur, he closed the distance to Chess. Chess caught Jalal's trajectory and braced, but the blast still shoved him backward and gouged deep furrows into the tower's floors. As Jalal readied a finishing blow, a card spun slowly in the air at the edge of the scene. Thunder cracked. From its face, a demon in white armor loomed, arms charged with lightning. Demon descent. Thunder swept down, slicing through the shattering golden light. Floors detonated like powder. Jalal fell through layer after layer. He forced himself steady with a sudden flare of light magic and tore back up in a streak of gold, compressing magic power into his right fist. Chess descended toward him, his own fist wreathed in God-Slayer magic. Amid the cascading rubble, their fists met, red against gold, producing a cataclysmic impact. A howling storm spread outward, gnawing away every structure until a barren domain lay where the tower's wings had stood. Just one more step, and I could sweep away a tragic world and bring an age of ideal freedom. Jalal screamed, eyes bloodshot. "Why do you stand in my way, Chess? If you want freedom so badly, then build it yourself." Chess snarled through clenched teeth, bracing every muscle. "Relying on some unknown savior and calling it hope, that's cowardice. You don't understand Zaref's greatness. I'm chosen by fate. Only I can hear Zaref." Jalal's words grew more frantic, more unhinged. Chess sighed and let go of the rhetorical fighting. He withdrew his fist and dispersed the pressure around him, an opening Jalal couldn't resist. But as Jalal's golden fist swung through the gap, purple and pink light flared behind Chess. 2 figures, Black Magician and Black Magician Girl, appeared, staves poised. "Dark burst, stream, magic," they intoned. A chaotic black sphere crackling with dark purple lightning blossomed in Jalal's field of vision. Caught off guard, his heavenly body magic was overwhelmed. He tumbled along the meteor path and smashed into a lower level he'd barely avoided before. The explosion rocked the Tower of Paradise. It teetered on the verge of total collapse. From the inferno, a column of golden light shot skyward, flying past Chess in a blur and revealing Jalal, clothes torn and face bloodied. "You forced me to do this," he snarled. "Give me 3 more years. No, just 3 years, and I'll raise another Tower of Paradise." His hands traced a massive circle of destructive intent, an eerie echo of the Phantom Lord's magic giant. The pattern was unmistakable. Inferno shatter, the taboo spell the council had forbidden. Chess hovered, strangely patient. He hadn't stopped Jalal because there was another reason he'd come. If Jalal fell, a new card might drop. Whether that happened would hinge on this final exchange. Chess canceled his previously prepared magic cylinder trap and chose instead to clash head-on, increasing the odds for a card drop. He concentrated every last shred of magic power into a burning core. Scarlet energy knotted and condensed into a living miniature sky dragon that coiled beside him, gaze locked on Jalal. "God-Slayer's secret art," Chess intoned, his voice like a bell. "Turn the entire tower to ash along with it. Inferno shatter!" "God's wrath." "Superconductive wave," Jalal screamed. 2 beams of annihilation hurtled toward each other. The leaking residual force alone would have pulverized the tower. Their collision detonated in a cataclysm that rolled across the sea. Giant waves rose like mountains. Even from a safe distance, Simon and the others felt their ship shudder. The deck pitched so wildly, items were hurled everywhere. Are they even human?" Wally gripped the rail, face white as he watched the sea boil. Simon and Hugh clung to the hull to steady themselves. Miliana, clutching her scattered cat dolls, was swept off her feet by a sudden gust. Miliana! Simon started, lunging. But when he turned, he saw a small wooden skiff bobbing in the waves behind them. Several people clustered on it. One was bent over, retching into the sea. Crimson hair streamed in the wind. A familiar profile flashed in his memory, etched so deeply it hurt to recall. Miliana was carried by the gale and slammed into a steel-armored figure who caught her without a second's hesitation. Hiss! So hard! Ow, ow, ow! Miliana wailed, rubbing her forehead. Urza froze, one arm around the girl. The face pressed to her armor blurred and then sharpened into painful clarity. Memories unlocked in a torrent. Tears pooled and spilled over. When the two faces matched entirely, Urza's voice broke. Are you Miliana? Chapter 140, Special Summon, Demon God Harfaz. The raging storm of magic lasted nearly a minute before it gradually died down. When the sea returned to its former calm, the Tower of Paradise that had once stood tall was gone. In its place lay glittering fragments that covered the entire small island. Those were the magic crystals. Jelal had hidden inside the tower, intended to absorb the Council's magic spirit power, 2.7 billion in conceptual magic power, to complete his plan to resurrect Zareth. Though the clash between Chess and Jelal hadn't reached the scale of magic spirit power, the crystals still drank in a massive amount of energy. From a distance, the island looked as if it had been frozen, shimmering with a dreamlike ice-blue light. On that ground, paved with shards of magic crystal, Chess and Jelal faced each other. Both were blood-stained, chests heaving, exhausted and ragged, clearly at the limits of their endurance. Silence hung over the battlefield, except for the sound of ragged, rapid breathing. To fight me to this extent, even Inferno Shatter couldn't take you down, Jelal rasped, eyes ringed red with fury and frustration. His 8-year plan for the Tower of Paradise had been crushed, utterly ruined, with no chance of salvage. Even without magic, I'll kill you, crush your damned skull with my fists, one blow at a time, Chess. Jelal clenched his blood-slick hands, staring with a murderous look in his eyes. Chess only smiled, a little blood at the corner of his mouth, and radiated an unnervingly calm arrogance. Going from grand magic to primitive brawling? That's interesting, but I'm not in the mood for that right now. He sounded oddly excited. During their last exchange, 2 new cards had erupted out of him in a way nobody had seen before. As if to punctuate that, a faint glow flickered at his feet, and the outline of a face-down card became visible. The trap card, Stamina Enhancer, Super Z. The demon-shaped bottle on the card emptied with a hiss. A gust of wind swelled, and Chess's deflated aura began to climb back up. Stamina Enhancer, Super Z only replenished magic power. It couldn't heal physical injuries or mental fatigue, so it wouldn't restore Chess to peak condition. But simply recovering his magic power was enough to send Jelal into utter despair. What? How can such a card exist? Jalal's face contorted in disbelief and horror. Don't underestimate the bond between a card magician and his deck, Chess said, taking a deep breath as he stretched. He turned toward Jelal with a teasing smile. You wanted to smash my head, right? Come on then. There was a long, helpless pause on Jalal's face. With nothing left to lose, he forced out a final torrent of power, burning the rest of his life energy in a desperate surge. A golden light that should have scattered instead enveloped the battlefield once more. Chess stood with his arms folded, watching Jalal's death throes in silence. At the peak of that light, Chess reached out as if drawing a card. My turn. Draw. A stream of dark purple light flashed, and an unused monster card appeared at his fingertips. Come forth, from the depths of hell, the ruler of ultimate destruction, the legendary demon god at the pinnacle of the demon realm. Harfaz. A complex, deep magic circle flared. In the swirling vortex of magic, a figure stepped out, heavy with an oppressive presence. Beneath ice-blue horns, long white hair billowed. Ice-blue wings and a tail stirred, accentuating a flawless, alluring figure. That's right, I am the legendary demon god Harfaz, Mirajane form, the summoned Mirajane announced, raising a finger with a faint smile. Under the terrifying aura she emitted, the smile, though sweet, had an edge that sent chills down the spine. If it had been Lucy there, she'd have rolled her eyes at Chess's theatrical summoning chant. But Mirajane didn't. She enthusiastically played along, genuinely amused. Go, demon god, strike him down, Chess ordered, pointing at Jelal. With the tower destroyed and a fresh card in hand, he intended to let Mira finish the fight. Jalal snarled, veins bulging with fury. To hell with you, Meteor! He hurled a golden beam with all the killing intent and anger he had left, but it was no match for Harfus in full force. Speed was Harfus's greatest asset. With a single encounter, Jalal was blasted across the crystal-strewn ground. Crashing down hard, he cast a shadow as Mira Jane stepped onto his chest, leaned over, and extended a demonized finger toward his forehead. Eyes. Her voice was calm as she pushed the finger forward. Jalal's pupils widened, his neck slackened, and he passed out. A tiny ghost-like wisp drifted from his mouth. According to stories told about the demon god Harfas, Mira Jane could terrify people into unconsciousness with such a look. Makarov had once pleaded with her not to use it openly for just that reason. Here, though, Jalal hadn't been frightened. He'd been utterly spent. Not enough. Mira Jane murmured, tilting her head toward Chess, her expression laced with brutal expectation. I'm badly hurt, you know. Chess took a small step backward. Ice blue smoke curled from Mira Jane as she shifted back into her usual gentle older sister form. She glanced over Chess's shoulder and grinned. You could at least let me look cool once. The wind stilled and the waves softened. Sunlight broke through the clouds and lit the girl's sweet face. The battle of the Tower of Paradise was over. Chess, however, noticed something else. The blue bar on Mira Jane's magic indicator was nearly empty. If her magic power had been drained in one hit, how could he summon more cards from her? He'd need to make her practice later. Chess! A shout cut through his thoughts. Natsu, Lucy, and the others had landed on the crystal-strewn island. Urza led them. After Simon had told them everything, Urza's expression was taut, serious in a way different from the usual scold she reserved for Natsu and Gray. Yo, Urza, why'd you come? Chess greeted them with a sheepish smile, scratching his head. Sorry, I didn't keep the promise we made in prison and for wrecking your childhood landmark. Urza's jaw worked, but she said nothing. Her boots crunched across the magic crystals, and then she closed the distance, hands trembling at her sides. Why did you do something so dangerous? She'd spent the trip in near constant anxiety, thinking only of how insane the Tower of Paradise was and how reckless Jalal could be. The idea that Chess or Mira Jane might be harmed over something personal to him had terrified her. I'm too cowardly, she'd admitted to herself, too afraid to imagine the worst. So she'd prayed they'd be all right the whole way there. The reason is simple. We're partners. Chess met Urza's misty eyes, and for once, his teasing smile fell away. Didn't the Guildmaster say a partner's pain is everyone's pain, a partner's sadness is everyone's sorrow? If this broken tower and this broken man are hurting you, Urza, then let's just destroy them. That's a completely different thing, Urza snapped. The result's the same, isn't it? Chess waved his hand as if dismissing the severity of it. The emotions Urza had been bottling up finally burst out. You idiot! Do you even care about your own life? She roared. Scarlet hair whipping, Fairy Queen Urza raised her fist, ready to strike. Wait, Urza. Lucy went pale. None of them had expected Urza to be that angry. After everything, Chess had defeated the enemy and ended the crisis of the tower, yet Urza's fear and fury still overflowed. It's okay, Lucy, don't worry. Mira Jane stepped between them, easing Lucy back with a smile. Natsu, Gray, and Happy stood nearby, grinning, relaxed now that the danger had passed. Chess stood in the dissipating magic storm and slowly turned his back to Urza, exposing himself completely. I don't want to see you cry like you did in the prison cell that night, scared and helpless. If you need to get that out, hit me. The fist that came down was not full of anger, but of relief and exhaustion. Urza dropped her face into his battered back and clung to him, shaking, her tears hot and immediate. They fell onto the magic crystals, scattering glittering droplets. For the first time since her transplant, both of her eyes, which included her artificial one, were filled with tears. That's enough, Lucy breathed, the fear finally ebbing away. That's not fair. You didn't even take me to fight. Natsu bellowed in mock indignation. You idiot, you think you're stronger than Mira? The opponent was one of the 10 wizard saints, like Jose and the Guildmaster. Bringing you would have just been a problem, Gray shot back. Am I? I'm better than you pervert who doesn't wear clothes. Natsu retorted, and Gray snapped back. The two instantly slipped into their familiar bickering, brotherly fists flying and foreheads colliding. Someone save me! Happy wailed, clinging to Miliana. He waved at Mirajane, but Mirajane, who had just told Lucy not to worry, puffed her cheeks and ignored the little cat, looking at Chess and Urza with mock resentment. Unhappy, super unhappy. By the way, what do we do about him? Lucy asked, gesturing weakly to Jalal, who lay a short distance away, eyes rolled back. The memory of the tower's destruction still burned in her mind. Even unconscious, Jalal was a dangerous lunatic. Leave him to me, a heavy voice answered from behind. Lucy turned and froze as she recognized the newcomer. Ultir?